Chapter 1627 A Different Person. Chapter 1627 A Different Person. After disembarking from the jet, Qi Man led Yuan and Leah to the sealed demon, where a dozen members of the Qi family were stationed to keep watch over it. Yuan? Qi Feng, one of the people stationed there, was a little surprised to see Yuan. "Hey, it's been a while. You came here alone?" she asked. "Yes, the others are busy with their training." Yuan's attention quickly shifted to the sealed demon in the distance. "Just one? How disappointing. Actually, we found another sealed demon just a few hours ago," Qi Feng suddenly revealed. "What? How powerful is it?" Qi Man exclaimed. "It's hard to tell, but it shouldn't be any stronger than this one." Qi Feng's gaze landed on the sealed demon several meters away. Yuan approached the demon and examined it with his divine sense. "This demon is a demon general," he muttered a moment later. "What? Are you certain?" Qi Feng exclaimed in a shocked voice. He nodded in confirmation and continued speaking. "Not only is it a demon general, but it's as powerful as a spirit sovereign." Qi Feng and everyone who heard his evaluation fell to their knees, their faces etched with despair. "A spirit sovereign? How the hell are we supposed to kill it? This demon could destroy the world by itself." Qi Man cried out loud as he fell back and collapsed on the ground. Elder Qi. "Grandfather." Qi Feng rushed to his side. Seeing this, Yuan said, "Calm down. It's only a spirit sovereign. I'll take care of it." Qi Feng frowned at his words and said, "This isn't the time to be arrogant or get carried away, Yuan. I know you're powerful, but you're only at the peak of Spirit Grandmaster. There's no way you can fight a demon that is as strong as a spirit sovereign, much less kill it. The only thing we can do is strengthen the seal until we're capable of dealing with it. True, my cultivation is only at the peak of Spirit Grandmaster, but it won't take long for me to increase it." Yuan suddenly retrieved a treasure head acquired from the primal expanse. After swallowing it, he could immediately feel his cultivation soaring to the next realm. A second later, Yuan had a breakthrough and reached the first level of Spirit Lord. However, his surge of spiritual energy didn't slow down. It continued relentlessly until he broke through to the second level of Spirit Lord. It then pushed him into the third level before finally settling at the fourth level of Spirit Lord. If it wasn't for the Celestial Emperor's curse, he could have easily entered the Spirit Sovereign realm with that treasure. "Alright, let's get this over with." While everyone was still in a daze after witnessing Yuan break through with the ease of breathing, he swiftly unsealed the demon before any of them could even react. "Ah! What have you done?" Qi Feng cried out loud. "Get away from here if you don't want to get caught up in our battle," Yuan said to them. Run." Qi Feng shouted, snapping the others out of their daze. Once they realized their situation, they immediately scrambled to safety, to Leah's side. Moments later, the demon was fully released from its seal and calmly began to survey its surroundings and assess the situation. "Ha ha ha. I am finally free." It suddenly burst out laughing, its voice loud and powerful enough to create shockwaves. Yuan didn't interrupt the demon's celebration and patiently waited for it to notice him. Sometime later, the demon turned to look at Yuan and spoke, "There's even a meal prepared for me? This must be demon god's work." The demon suddenly lunged at Yuan, its claw-like hands reaching for his neck. However, just as it was able to reach Yuan, it suddenly felt something grasping onto its neck, holding it back from advancing any further. The demon was stunned to realize that Yuan had seized its neck before it could grab his. "When did you?" "Shoo." Yuan hushed the demon by tightening his grasp on its neck. If it weren't for the demon's regenerative abilities, it would have already died from having its neck crushed. "You just escaped your seal, so I'm sure you haven't fully recovered your strength. Don't worry, it'll give you some time to recover so it isn't too boring." Yuan flicked his arm, flinging the demon away like a rag doll. "Yuan! What the hell are you doing?" Qi Feng yelled at him after seeing his actions. "Calm down. It's just a mere demon general. I can deal with trash like this with my eyes closed." Yuan laughed out loud. The demon trembled in anger after being humiliated by Yuan in such a fashion. How dare a mere livestock mock me, a great demon general? Veins appeared all over the demon's face and body. Unforgivable. The demon's aura erupted with intense bloodlust. Feeling the demon's overwhelming bloodlust and the terrifying pressure that accompanied it, Qi Feng and the others trembled uncontrollably. They were so paralyzed with fear that even if given the chance, they wouldn't have been able to run away. What the hell are you doing? Even Leah couldn't help but question Yuan's decision to anger the demon, as it would only make things more difficult for him. Die, you damn livestock. The demon lunged at Yuan for the second time. Too slow. Yuan lunged forward as well, flying straight toward the demon. Using nothing but his raw strength, he began pummeling the demon. Each of Yuan's punches was powerful enough to blow a hole through the demon's body. Ha ha ha. What's the matter, you fucking trash? Is this all your anger amounts to? You're too weak. No wonder why you were sealed by the demon's sealing clan. Yuan relentlessly provoked the demon during its beatdown. Qi Feng and the others were left speechless by Yuan's sudden change in behavior, feeling as though he had become a completely different person. Ah! The demon let out a crazed roar, its entire being radiating with unfathomable anger as its body suddenly began to transform. Chapter 16:28 Second Sealed Demon. Chapter 16:28 Second Sealed Demon. Damn livestock. You will regret mocking me. The demon general suddenly grew in size until it was 3 times its original height, its muscles bulging as if they were on the brink of bursting, and 2 bat-like wings sprouted from its back. So you grew a little bigger and a lot uglier. I don't see how that will save you. Yuan commented on the demon's transformation. Sure enough, even after its transformation, the demon general couldn't touch a single hair on Yuan's body, much less defeat him. This bastard has grown so much since our last spar, and it's only been a year. Leah narrowed her eyes at Yuan. She had always been proud of her own talents and strength, but before Yuan, she felt as insignificant as an ant. Is this the prowess of the immortal monarch? I guess he didn't command the 9 divine supremes through sheer luck. Impossible. How is he overwhelming a demon general with the strength of a spirit sovereign at his cultivation? It doesn't make any sense. Qi Feng muttered with a dazed expression. He's not even using any demon sealing aura either. Are you telling me that he's overwhelming the demon with brute force? No wonder why he's so confident. Qi Man cried out loud. Even if he's confident and everything seems fine for now, why is he messing around? Demons aren't playthings, and things can go wrong in the blink of an eye. Qi Feng anxiously clenched her fist. Fuck. 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 Where did a human like you come from? The demon general no longer wanted to fight Yuan and began preparing to run away. Even if the entire world knew my name, I guess it's not possible for everyone to recognize my face, huh? Yuan muttered in a low voice. While there was not a single demon who didn't know of the divine paragon, not all of them had the misfortune of encountering him, so it wasn't shocking that this demon general didn't recognize Yuan. I guess it's about time we finish this. Yuan suddenly surged with demon sealing aura. The moment the demon general sensed this aura, its entire being trembled with fear. Although demons typically don't fear demon sealing aura, even though it is their greatest weakness, Yuan's demon sealing aura was on an entirely different level, one that made the demon feel completely powerless, as if surrounded by the abyss. No matter how many times I see it, his demon sealing aura always humbles me. Qi Man muttered, completely in awe. The demon general didn't dare to confront Yuan's demon sealing aura and instantly ran away. Where the hell do you think you're going? Yuan caught up with the demon in no time and shoved his hand into the demon's body before pulling out of its demon core. This technique. You can't be the divine. The demon general perished before it could even finish its sentence. Yuan quickly tossed the demon core into his pocket and turned to look at the Qi family. Bring me to the next demon, he said to them. Once they snapped out of their daze, the Qi family escorted Yuan to the next sealed demon several hours away. Yuan frowned as he looked at the sealed demon. Unlike the usual human-shaped statue, this one had no particular shape and resembled a small mountain. We mistook this as an ordinary boulder at first, but we examined it a little closer since it seemed out of place, and sure enough, we could sense a sealed demon inside. Qi Feng explained. Yuan. Qi Feng raised an eyebrow upon noticing a surprised expression on Yuan's face. This isn't an ordinary demon. He spoke slowly. This is a special demon called an abomination. They're essentially mutants even within the demon clan. Abomination? We have never heard of them before. How strong are they? Qi Man asked. They're not only much harder to kill but also stronger than the average demon, and judging by its energy, it's as strong as a divine warrior. What? Divine warrior? That an entirely different realm. Qi Feng exclaimed in a shocked tone. There's no way we can defeat something like that even if we're given 1,000 years. Qi Man said. Yuan shook his head and said, I can still deal with it, but I will need some time to prepare. Yuning, can you set up a barrier around this area so I don't completely destroy this place? Yuan asked. Of course, young master. Once Yuan transferred control to Yuning, his cultivation temporarily soared to the peak of spirit enlightenment. I guess the peak of spirit enlightenment is my new limit, huh? Yuan thought to himself. Sometime later, Yuning returned the control to Yuan after setting up the formation. I am finished, young master. As long as they're not stronger than a divine grandmaster, no attacks will be able to break this formation. Thanks. He turned to look at the Qi family and said, you guys should stand further back. Are you sure you want to unseal it now? Why don't you come back a few years later, when your cultivation is much higher? The seal is strong enough to keep that demon sealed for another decade, so you have plenty of time. Qi Man suggested. Yuan looked at him and said, you should know by now that one's cultivation isn't the most important factor when dealing with demons. It's our demon sealing aura that matters, and it doesn't require spiritual energy to be strengthened. He stopped paying attention to the Qi family and focused on the sealed abomination. Once he was prepared, Yuan broke the seal and waited for the abomination to emerge. The earth trembled as the abomination began breaking free from its seal. Cracks rapidly spread across the boulder before it suddenly exploded a few seconds later, revealing the creature's ugly and menacing form. That is an abomination? Qi Feng and the others wore expressions of fear and disgust upon seeing its grotesque appearance. Even though Yuan had warned them about its hideous appearance, none of them could have anticipated just how horrifying it would be. Chapter 1629 The Divine Fox of Grand Prophecies Divination. Chapter 1629 The Divine Fox of Grand Prophecies Divination. The second the abomination broke out of its seal, Yuan activated Swords of Eternal Torment. Once the abomination's massive body was covered in swords, immobilizing it, Yuan instantly transformed. His hair and eyes turned a majestic gold, and his aura erupted like a volcano, radiating immense power. That's? Leah's eyes widened with shock after seeing Yuan's dragon transformation for the first time. Not only does he know dragon's gaze, but he can even transform. She stared at Yuan's handsome face with a dazed expression. Meanwhile, after his transformation, Yuan retrieved number 1 under heaven and prepared to launch Heaven's Splitting Sword Strike. He had to control its power so that it didn't exceed the strength of a divine grandmaster and accidentally destroy the world, but he also had to ensure it was powerful enough to completely obliterate the abomination in one strike. After taking a moment to adjust and gather spiritual energy, Yuan swung his sword, launching a beam of sword light that enveloped the abomination's figure. Fortunately for them, the abomination wasn't as massive as the one Yuan had faced during the elite demon sealer examination. The moment Yuan's heaven-splitting sword strike hit the formation, it triggered a massive earthquake powerful enough to be felt across the entire world. Cracks spread across the formation, yet it somehow managed to hold together, clinging to a sliver of strength. When the dust settled and the Qi family could finally see the situation, they were bewildered to find that Yuan was standing alone and the abomination had vanished entirely. Heavens! He killed a demon with the strength of a divine warrior while only being a spirit lord. Chi-Man cried out loud, his entire being trembling in awe. How on earth is he doing that? Ignoring his demon's sealing aura, his strength doesn't match his cultivation. Is he hiding his true cultivation? It doesn't make any sense. Chi Fong shook her head. Once the abomination was defeated, it left behind its demon core. Yuan's eyes widened with surprise when he saw how different it was from an ordinary demon core. It wasn't just the size of a watermelon but also pitch black in color. This is a demon core. Yuan mumbled as he picked up the core. He was also a bit disappointed, realizing it would be impossible for him to consume a demon core of this size, as it wouldn't even fit in his mouth. The Qi family approached him once they determined it was safe to do so. What the heck is that? Qi Fong asked as she pointed at the demon core. The abomination's demon core. This is also my first time seeing something like this, he said. Chi-Man shivered at its sight and said, it feels very ominous. What are you going to do with it? I don't know if we can even do anything with it. Chi-Man then said, in that case, would you mind allowing our family to research it? Of course, we're not asking you to give it to us. It'll still be your property. Yuan nodded, sure. Let me know if you learn anything. He handed the demon core to Chi-Man, so heavy. Chi-Man nearly dropped the demon core once it was in his grasp. The demon core was deceptively heavy and weighed several tons. Oh, sorry. It was almost weightless for me, so I forgot to tell you. Yuan said with an apologetic smile. It's okay. Chi-Man quickly moved the demon core back to their private jet. Sometime later, they returned to the Qi family to celebrate the demon's extermination with a big feast. Yuan, can I bother you to check on our disciples' progress before you leave? It's been some time since their lecture with you, after all. Qi Huan asked him. Of course. During the feast, the disciples put on a performance to showcase their demon's sealing aura. What do you think, Yuan? Have they improved a little? He nodded, yes, they've improved, but there's still a lot of work to be done. I would give them another lecture, but I have to return to Cultivation online by the end of the day. Next time, surely. We'll be waiting for your return. After the feast, Leah escorted Yuan back to the Dragon Spiral Mountain. During their travel, she questioned him, how did you use dragon transformation? Only those with a dragon bloodline could possibly do such a thing. I was able to do that after performing the dragon cleansing ceremony. The dragon cleansing ceremony? Leah was deeply shocked to learn this, finding it unbelievable that dragons, who were famously strict about their traditions and bloodlines, would permit a human to partake in one of their most sacred rituals, especially those of royal bloodlines. Which royal bloodline would be foolish enough to do such a thing? She sighed inwardly. Once they returned to the Dragon Spiral Mountain, Yuan spoke with the Lord, recounting everything that had transpired. An abomination, huh? That thing would have spelled the end of this world if you weren't here, he sighed. As long as I am here, no demon will cause havoc on Earth ever again. Notify me again if they find any more demons. Of course. At the end of the day, Yuan returned to Cultivation Online. Welcome back. You're just in time for my divination. The Divine Fox of Grand Prophecy had just finished her preparation. Now, witness my divination. The Divine Fox of Grand Prophecy was suddenly enveloped in a golden aura that expanded outward until it covered the entire Mystic Valley. Grand Prophecy, show me the location of the Primal Monarch, she roared. A complex and majestic magic circle materialized beneath the Divine Fox, radiating an unfathomable aura. The Divine Fox's eyes glowed with a golden light that shone like a flashlight, and intricate symbols began to form within her eyes. The Divine Fox remained in this state for several moments until she suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. That is impossible. She muttered in disbelief. What happened? Did you fail? Yuan asked with a slight frown, wondering if something went wrong with the divination. No. The divination succeeded, and I have the Primal Monarch's location. But the Grand Prophecy revealed that its location is, here. In the Mystic Valley. she exclaimed, her voice filled with terror. What? Yuan's eyes widened with shock upon hearing this. Chapter 1630 Primal Monarch. Chapter 1630 Primal Monarch, what did you say? The Primal Monarch is located somewhere in the Mystic Valley? Are you sure you divined properly? Yuan looked at the divine fox of grand prophecy. Why you? Are you mocking me? I have never failed a divination. I am sure of it. The Primal Monarch is in the Mystic Valley. The divine fox of grand prophecy said as she frantically looked at her surroundings with a nervous and fearful expression. The Primal Monarch was an entity that stood at the very pinnacle of the primal expanse. If there were primals and predators within the primal expanse, the Primal Monarch would be the apex predator, existing in a league of its own. Knowing that the Primal Monarch was in her territory, the divine fox of grand prophecy didn't dare to make any significant movements, remaining as still as a statue. Yuan looked at Yingzi and noticed that she, too, appeared quite nervous. It was the first time he had ever seen such emotions from her. This can't be a coincidence. Yuan thought to himself. He recalled something the divine fox of grand prophecy said. He will only appear before you if he chooses to do so, he mumbled. Several moments passed in silence, with nothing happening. After waiting a little longer without any changes, Yuan decided to make the first move. Primal Monarch. You can hear me, right? In fact, I bet you're looking at me right now, he shouted with the support of his spiritual energy, allowing his voice to ripple throughout the entire Mystic Valley. The divine fox of grand prophecy and Yingzi turned to at him with terrified expressions on their faces. What the hell are you doing? Do you have a death wish? The divine fox shouted at him. Yuan ignored her and continued, I doubt you're here by chance. Are you here for me? If so, why don't you show yourself already? Yuan. Yingzi called out to him in a nervous tone. If the Primal Monarch wanted to kill Yuan, even she was powerless to do anything about it. Don't tell me you want to play hide-and-seek with me. I don't have the time for that. As Yuan's voice faded and silence returned, a faint rustling noise suddenly broke the stillness. Yuan and the others immediately turned their heads toward the source of the noise, and a small silhouette slowly emerged from the tall bushes. You are. Yuan's eyes widened with shock when he saw the appearance, the face of this individual. Once the silhouette fully emerged from the bushes, it became clear that it was a child, a young boy. He had short black hair and innocent eyes that held a sharp and powerful gaze. Like Yingzi, he had an uncanny absence of presence, despite standing right in front of them. Yuan was in disbelief, not because this individual had the appearance of a child, but because the child's face was identical to his own when he was younger. It was as if he were staring at a mirror image of his past self. The divine fox of grand prophecy and Yingzi also noticed this obvious detail. If they hadn't known any better, they would have mistaken this child for Yuan's son. You are the Primal Monarch? Yuan asked. After a moment of silence, instead of answering his question, the child said, Who are you? And why do you have that appearance? The atmosphere in the Mystic Valley shifted abruptly. Sensing this change, both the divine fox of grand prophecy and Yingzi began to sweat profusely. What do you mean? I have always looked like this. In fact, I should be the one asking you that. Why do you look like my childhood self? Yuan responded. The child narrowed his eyes. What is your name? And how are you related to Tian? Yuan's eyes widened with surprise after hearing this familiar name. He knows the Immortal Monarch. I am Yuan. As for my relationship with Tian, why are you asking? Who is he to you? I am the one asking questions here, brat. A domineering pressure suddenly surrounded Yuan, forcing him to his knees. The force was so powerful that Yuan couldn't fight it even for a split second. You kneel. Yuan immediately activated Immortal Monarch's dominion on the child. However, the child remained standing, seemingly unaffected by the Immortal Monarch's dominion. Yuan's eyes widened after seeing the results, or the lack of. He was certain that the child before him was a beast, so this made it the first time his immortal monarch's dominion failed on a beast. As I thought, you were the one who used that power earlier. The child muttered, clearly unfazed by it. The pressure on Yuan suddenly disappeared. Are you that brat's descendant? Is Tian still alive? The child asked. What? Yuan muttered, utterly confused by the situation. Despite the strange situation, Yuan couldn't sense any killing intent from the child. Furthermore, the child's tone when speaking of Tian was akin to that of a father speaking to his child. I guess it's safe to assume that he's not my enemy. I'm not Tian's descendant, Yuan spoke as he got back to his feet. Was Tian in my past life. What? The child's eyes widened with surprise after hearing this. Bullshit. Then why don't you recognize me? He shrugged. I reincarnated not long ago and am still recovering my memories. Unfortunately, my memories of Tian's childhood are still missing. Anyway, you're the Primal Monarch, right? Since you know Tian, I must have traveled to this place in the past. So you really don't remember anything, huh? After sighing, the child spoke. Indeed, I am the Primal Monarch. You asked about my relationship with Tian, right? I am your father. You're my father? Yuan cried out loud at this revelation. So I wasn't even human? Let me finish, you brat. I am not your real father. You somehow wandered into our world when you were still a child, and I took you in. Is that so? Yuan swallowed nervously. Chapter 1631 Retrieving Tian's Memories. Chapter 1631 Retrieving Tian's Memories. What the hell is going on here? The Primal Monarch is that human's adoptive father? The divine fox of grand prophecy was bewildered by this information. She had countless questions, but she didn't dare to ask them. Since you don't remember me, I guess it's safe to assume you don't remember our promise. Did you wander to the primal expanse again by accident, too? The Primal Monarch looked at Yuan. He nodded. Yes, I came here by accident. I wanted to look for you because I was told you could take me out of this place. How long have you been watching me? The Primal Monarch sighed. Since you used my power at the Phoenix's territory. Your power? You mean Immortal Monarch's dominion? Yuan raised an eyebrow. If that's what you call it, sure. However, that power, the ability to command primals and predators, was originally mine, to begin with. The Primal Monarch revealed. Yuan wasn't too surprised to learn that the Immortal Monarch had inherited his power from another source, as it seemed unlikely for a human to naturally possess such control over beasts in the first place. The Primal Monarch suddenly gestured to Yuan and said, "Let me see the kind of life you've lived after leaving the primal expanse." Huh? You want to see my memories? But I don't have all of them. That doesn't mean anything to me. Well, you don't remember it now, they're definitely somewhere in there, so all I need to do is take it out from hiding. You can do that. Yuan didn't think of this until it was mentioned. Does it have any side effects? He was worried that it might affect his fate. No, my appearance in the primal expanse isn't a coincidence or an accident. It was fate that brought me here, so the Primal Monarch retrieving my memories should also be considered fate. If I was an inexperienced brat like yourself, you might lose all of your memories and become a vegetable. The Primal Monarch calmly said. But you're not, right? Yuan swallowed nervously. You really don't change, huh? A subtle smile appeared on the Primal Monarch's face. The next moment, he pointed 2 fingers at Yuan's forehead before shooting a warm beam of light directly into his head. Primal Monarch raised an eyebrow the following moment as he thought inwardly, this brat reincarnated more than once. Despite his interest and curiosity, the Primal Monarch didn't touch the memories that didn't belong to Tian. After retrieving Tian's memories, the Primal Monarch observed his entire life after leaving the primal expanse. Sometime later, the Primal Monarch lowered his hand and said, I understand the situation. Although I was able to retrieve most of Tian's memories, I was unable to retrieve the final moments of his life due to some interference. How do you feel? I remember now. Yuan muttered in a somewhat dazed voice. After the Primal Monarch pulled out Tian's memories, he remembered everything from his childhood. Tian was born into a wealthy and influential family. However, he lacked the talents necessary to survive there. In fact, he didn't have any cultivation talents, which was a complete surprise to Yuan since the Immortal Monarch was the fourth reincarnation, so he should have been a genius like his previous incarnations. Due to his lack of talent, Tian was abandoned by his parents and exiled from the family at the age of 6, leaving him to wander the streets as a foundling. However, that life didn't last long, as his family didn't want him to stay in the same city, so they forced him out into the wilderness, leaving him to fend for himself. Shortly after Tian entered the wilderness, he encountered a powerful magical beast that chased him to a nearby endless beast den. At that moment, two cultivators were locked in a fierce battle, causing the destruction of the endless beast den. The destruction of the endless beast den created a rift, and in his desperation, Tian entered it, not caring where it might lead him. Once he came out on the other end, Tian found himself in an unfamiliar world that reeked of wild beasts and blood. Where am I? Tian muttered as he frantically looked around. Suddenly, a rough voice resounded. I came here as soon as I noticed the scent of a human, but what is this? A human this small. You won't even be able to fill the gap between my teeth. Tian turned to the source of the voice and was immediately scared shitless when he saw a massive black dragon hovering in the sky. This human is mine. Another voice suddenly resounded, followed by the appearance of a phoenix with fiery purple flames. You dare covet my prey? I'll tear you to shreds. The black dragon roared. Not before I roast you for dinner. The purple phoenix laughed arrogantly. Their aura fiercely crashed with each other. Unable to bear the pressure, Tian fainted instantly. Tian didn't know how long he had been asleep for, but by the time he woke up, neither the phoenix nor dragon could be seen, almost as if they'd vanished magically. This is the first time I've seen a human like you. An unfamiliar but calm voice suddenly resounded. Jump-scared by the voice, Tian jumped to his feet and began running away without looking at the source of the voice. Where do you think you are going? The voice that was far away from Tian a moment ago suddenly sounded like it was right behind him. Tian swiftly realized that running wasn't an option and surrendered to his fate. He stopped running and fell to his knees. Go ahead and eat me. I don't care anymore. Why would I eat you? Even 1,000 of you wouldn't fill half my stomach. Eating you would only arouse more hunger. The voice laughed. At this moment, Tian turned around to face the voice, and to his bewilderment, the voice belonged to a child who didn't look any older than himself. As a matter of fact, this child didn't simply look to be the same age. He looked exactly like Tian, as if he was a perfect clone. Chapter 1632 Tempering in Blood. Chapter 1632 Tempering in Blood. Who are you? Why do you look like me? Tian was terrified when he realized that the face before him was actually his own face. I like it, so I decided to use it. You decided to use it. You're not human, are you? Humans don't exist in the primal expanse. Other than you, who came here from another world, everyone here is what you call beasts. Another world? Tian couldn't comprehend this information and became dazed. Seeing his dumbfounded expression, the entity with his face said, I am the Primal Monarch, and you are currently in my world, the primal expanse. He continued, what are you going to do now? Humans cannot survive in this world alone, and you're not even a cultivator. The moment I leave you alone, you'll become someone's food or toy until you die. Tian fell silent. A moment later, he spoke in a defeated tone, my family abandoned me because I was born without talents, and I somehow ended up in this dangerous place. I think this is heaven's way of telling me to just die. I am just a powerless mortal. Who am I to go against heaven's will? No matter what happens to me, I will accept it. The Primal Monarch smiled and said, you're an interesting human. Despite your young age, you're surprisingly clear-headed and intelligent. This heaven you speak of doesn't exist here. No, to be more precise, I am heaven here. The Primal Monarch boldly declared. I don't care how mighty your heaven is, it won't influence my territory. So if you want to survive, I can make that a reality. Tian stared at the Primal Monarch with wide eyes and spoke in a dazed manner. Even if you say that, how am I supposed to survive in this place? The Primal Monarch showed a wide smile and said, humans have never managed to pique my interest, but I think it'll be fun to have you around for some time. You want me to follow you? Tian asked. You don't want to? I'll do it. Tian responded without any hint of fear in his voice. This was the first time he felt accepted and needed, so he had no reason to refuse, even if that individual was not human. Good. After the Primal Monarch accepted Tian as his follower, he escorted Tian back to his home, which existed in a different dimension. There, the Primal Monarch taught Tian everything he needed to know about the primal expanse and the entities living there. This brat truly has a bright mind. His ability to learn and comprehend things is almost frightening. Even predators who have lived for tens of thousands of years wouldn't be able to match him. The Primal Monarch quickly realized that the notion of Tian being talentless was completely false. To throw away such talents, humans are such foolish creatures. In the blink of an eye, 2 years had passed since Tian began studying under the Primal Monarch. Listen here, you brat. If you want to live more than 100 years, you'll need to start cultivating. However, it's impossible for humans to cultivate properly in the primal expanse since your bodies cannot adapt to our environment. If they forcefully cultivate our chaotic essence, they will turn into mindless beasts. In that case, isn't it hopeless for me? Tian spoke calmly, almost as if it didn't matter to him whether he could cultivate or not. 100 years is already a long time, enough to live a fulfilled life. That's what someone who's never truly experienced life would say. Anyway, the reason humans are unable to cultivate chaotic essence is because they don't have a chaotic heart, something all beasts in the primal expanse are born with. In that case, what will happen if we give them a chaotic heart? The Primal Monarch spoke with a profound smile as he glared at Tian, who swallowed nervously. Is it even possible for a human to acquire a chaotic heart? Tian raised an eyebrow. We'll find out soon enough. I guess so. Tian understood that he was the subject of an experiment that had never been done before, fully aware that things could go disastrously wrong, yet he remained indifferent. The Primal Monarch went to the primal expanse to prepare for Tian's experiment. He returned a few hours later and prepared a bath filled to the brim with the blood of various beasts. First and foremost, we need to strengthen your frail body. This will be incredibly painful, unlike anything you've ever experienced before, so brace yourself. However, to the Primal Monarch's surprise, Tian neither screamed nor showed any signs of pain during the tempering from the beginning to the very end, lasting for 6 hours straight. How do you feel? The Primal Monarch asked Tian as he emerged from the bath. Feels like my body is surging with strength, he said. Did you not experience any pain during the tempering? I did, and it hurt like hell. Tian calmly replied. The Primal Monarch gazed at the blood bath and thought to himself, I never could have imagined he'd endure 6 hours on his first tempering. How interesting. He began to feel that he had made the right choice in taking Tian under his wing. Over the next 4 years, Tian continued to bathe in the blood that the Primal Monarch provided. The pain he endured grew more intense as the quality and potency of the blood increased. Your body should be strong enough to grow a chaotic heart now. The Primal Monarch retrieved a mountain of treasures and continued, although we are born with a chaotic heart, it isn't complete at birth and requires tremendous effort to complete it. Once completed, predators can further grow a second or even third chaotic heart by consuming large amounts of treasures. Let's see if you can grow a chaotic heart by consuming treasures. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1633 Primal Monarch's Bloodline. Chapter 1633 Primal Monarch's Bloodline. After his body tempering period ended, Tian began consuming an enormous amount of treasures provided by the Primal Monarch to cultivate a chaotic heart. He was akin to a pig, but instead of eating pig food, he was being fed priceless treasures. However, despite the vast number of treasures he consumed, there were no signs of his chaotic heart forming. Despite this, Tian's cultivation soared, reaching the level of divine ancestor in just 4 years solely by consuming treasures. He achieved this without needing to cultivate or learn any cultivation techniques, as the Primal Monarch assisted him in absorbing and containing all that energy. Your chaotic heart isn't forming. We might be missing something. The Primal Monarch eventually halted feeding him treasures. Maybe it's because I lack a proper bloodline, Tian casually guessed. Bloodline, huh? That might be it. The Primal Monarch fell silent for a few moments, a contemplative expression on his face. I have never done or even thought about doing this before, but I can give you some of my blood essence, which has a chance of giving you my bloodline. The Primal Monarch muttered with a curious face. Even in the divine heaven, humans can acquire bloodlines through the blood essence of magical beasts or divine beasts. However, since the creation of blood essence requires tremendous effort and even involves sacrificing one's longevity, they are only created for special occasions and are incredibly rare, even in the world of beasts. Once you accept my blood essence, we'll essentially be family. What do you think? Are you willing to accept the bloodline of a beast? The Primal Monarch asked Tian. Tian smiled and said, I already see you as a family and a father, so nothing's changed. The Primal Monarch laughed out loud, finding his answer extremely entertaining. Very well. Then, give me some time to form my blood essence. Since this is my first time doing something like this, it will take a few years to complete. A few years? What should I do in the meantime? Tian asked. I'll teach you a few of my techniques, so you can use this time to train them. The Primal Monarch transferred several of his own techniques to Tian directly through his mind, allowing him to understand them instantly. However, he still needed to train to deepen his understanding and strengthen the techniques. Afterward, the Primal Monarch entered seclusion to form his blood essence, leaving Tian alone for the next decade. In these 10 years, Tian focused on training the techniques bestowed by the Primal Monarch, occasionally tempering his body and consuming the leftover treasures. His cultivation reached the peak of Immortal Ascension without any issues. When the Primal Monarch returned with his blood essence, he didn't immediately feed it to Tian, as he feared that Tian was too weak to absorb his blood essence. Let's increase your cultivation a bit more to be safe. Thus, he fed Tian even more treasures. After a few more years, Tian broke through Immortal Ascension and became a true immortal at the Bronze Immortal realm. Normally, a cultivator would need to face a heavenly tribulation before they can ascend past Immortal Ascension and become an immortal, but since Tian was located in Primal Expanse, where the heavens had no influence, he was able to break through that barrier without facing one. So, I just consumed this like water? Tian inquired with the Primal Monarch's blood essence in his grasp. Yes, pour it onto your tongue and let it be absorbed. Tian followed the Primal Monarch's instructions and placed a single drop of blood essence onto his tongue. The blood essence melted into his tongue the instant it touched. At first, he felt no change, but after a few moments, his entire body began to burn up, as if his blood were boiling. The Primal Monarch watched with great focus, paying attention to every little detail and change occurring within Tian's body. Veins bulged across Tian's body, as if they were on the verge of bursting through his skin. Soon, they began to glow with a golden hue, as if liquid gold were coursing through them. Ah! Tian let out a beastly roar that shook the entire world. Moments later, he began to calm down, and his body quickly started to recover. How do you feel now? The Primal Monarch asked him. Even before Tian's response, the Primal Monarch could tell from Tian's aura that he had successfully absorbed the blood essence. I feel the same. Tian muttered in a somewhat puzzled voice. Although he didn't realize it, his voice carried an unfathomable power capable of commanding all beasts if there were any near him. Of course, it wouldn't work on the Primal Monarch, who gave him the power. You may not feel it now, but you'll realize it sooner or later, said the Primal Monarch. As long as you learn to control that power, you'll be invincible within the primal expanse, even as a mortal. However, great power comes with great responsibilities, and I trust that you won't abuse this power. Tian smiled and said, I won't betray that trust, but if I ever do, you can kill me. Kill you? Humph. It'll make you suffer a fate worse than death. The Primal Monarch sneered. After acquiring his new powers, Tian spent several more years studying and practicing to master control over them. During this time, Tian also successfully formed his chaotic heart, albeit an incomplete one. Once the Primal Monarch was confident Tian could survive by himself, he was released into the Primal Expanse for experience. What should I do in the Primal Expanse besides completing my chaotic heart? Tian asked the Primal Monarch before leaving for the Primal Expanse. How should I know? This is meant to expand your experience, so live however you want for the next 100 years. Also, you will be hunted everywhere you go because you're a human, and your scent will drive everyone mad, so try to stay alive. I don't want all of my efforts to go to waste. I will try not to disappoint you. Tian left for the Primal Expanse with an excited smile on his face. Chapter 1634 Tian Yi's Growth. Chapter 1634 Tian Yi's Growth. After Tian left home to gain experience in the Primal Expanse, the Primal Monarch secretly followed him, having nothing better to do. Of course, since this was Tian's first time exploring alone, he also felt a little worried for him. However, the Primal Monarch's worries were quickly relieved once he saw how quickly Tian adapted to the Primal Expanse. While his cultivation as a bronze immortal was respectable in the Primal Expanse, it was far from sufficient for him to be reckless and careless. Tian didn't have any big ambitions and wanted to complete his chaotic heart as soon as possible, which he set as his primary goal. He traversed the Primal Expanse in search of treasures, dominating nearly every territory he encountered. Tian's presence quickly spread throughout the Primal Expanse like wildfire, and within a few years, nearly every powerhouse there had heard of the human causing havoc in their territories. A human who can cultivate and use his powers? Bullshit. There's no way such a human exists. What? This human has a chaotic heart? Are you sure he's really human and not just a predator in disguise? Most of the powerhouses refused to believe that a human could create such chaos in their world, especially when every human before him had been unable to adapt to their chaotic essence. However, some had their interest piqued and left their territories to seek out this human they had been hearing so much about. After another decade, it was all but confirmed that Tian was real, and he was growing at such a tremendous rate that he could pose a threat to even the powerhouses in the Primal Expanse if given a few more decades. Tian quickly became a presence that could not be ignored, prompting predators across the Primal Expanse to attempt to either tame or kill him. However, every failed attempt only made Tian stronger. Eventually, Tian became so powerful that it took several powerhouses just to face him on equal footing. Fuck. Where's the Primal Monarch? Why isn't he doing anything about this human when his world is being flipped upside down? The natives of the Primal Expanse were puzzled by the Primal Monarch's silence. Normally, whenever a situation threatened the balance of the world or someone caused excessive chaos, the Primal Monarch would intervene. Yet, he was nowhere to be seen. This made some wonder if something had happened to the Primal Monarch. However, after 100 years had passed since Tian first appeared in the Primal Expanse, he vanished as suddenly as he had arrived. Unbeknownst to the natives, Tian had returned to the Primal Monarch's home. How was your experience in the outside world? The Primal Monarch asked upon Tian's return, pretending as if he hadn't been watching him the entire time. It was a little scary at first with the amount of beasts trying to kill me, but once I got used to it, it was pretty fun. Tian laughed out loud. Is that so? Let's see how many chaotic hearts you've managed to form in the last 100 years. After a quick examination, the Primal Monarch was surprised to sense 4 chaotic hearts within Tian's body. 4 chaotic hearts in 100 years, huh? Not bad, considering that even the strongest predators in the Primal Expanse only have 6 after millions of years. Not only did Tian acquire 4 chaotic hearts, but his cultivation even reached Golden Immortal in 100 years. What should I do now? I have done pretty much everything there is to do in this world, not that there is much to do in the first place. Well, do you have any interest in owning your own territory? The Primal Monarch asked. Not really. I just don't see the appeal of owning a territory. Unfortunately, there isn't much for you to do in this world. In the first place, the primal expanse wasn't created for humans. As for the rest of us, we live to increase our strength and expand our territories. We thrive off growth and preying on the weak. If there's nothing to do, I can simply create my own entertainment. For example, I can bring human entertainment into this world. Tian suggested. However, the Primal Monarch shook his head and said, that won't work. What you humans find entertaining is meaningless to us. Just as owning territories holds no appeal for you, we find human culture dull and uninteresting. Tian sighed, this is why I didn't mind remaining as a mortal and living only 100 years. The Primal Monarch fell silent for several moments before asking, have you ever thought about returning to your home, the human world? Tian looked at the sky and responded in an oddly calm tone, I have. Many times, in fact. However, even if I were to go back, I wouldn't know what to do. Furthermore, he looked at the Primal Monarch directly in the eyes and continued, although I was born in the human world, I grew up in this world, and my family is also here, so this world is my home. The Primal Monarch laughed out loud and said, that's heartwarming and all, but you don't belong here. Now that you're all grown up and have the power to survive without my help, I think you should go back to the human world. You seem eager to send me away. Why? Tian noticed this and inquired with a deep frown, feeling like he was being abandoned by his family for a second time. The Primal Monarch shook his head and said, this world is more complex than it appears. Also, there's nothing left for me to teach you, and unless you want to die of boredom in this world or spend the rest of your life fighting the natives of this world, it only makes sense for you to return to your original world. In the first place, I never expected you to remain in this world by my side forever. I took you in and helped you grow so that you could one day return to your world and become living proof that this heaven isn't omnipotent and its will could be defied. Tian was speechless, unsure of how to respond. Chapter 1635 Primal Monarch's Blood Essence. Chapter 1635 Primal Monarch's Blood Essence. Do I really have to leave and return to the human world? Tian stared at the Primal Monarch with a dispirited expression. The Primal Monarch smiled and said, the primal expanse isn't your final stop. You are fated to achieve great things in the human world. It'll give you a few years to prepare, but you must leave within 10 years. Tian sighed, fine. If you so desperately want me to leave, I won't argue any further. However, how do I even return to the human world? According to what I've heard, it's impossible to leave the primal expanse. There is only one way to leave the primal expanse, and that is through me. The Primal Monarch said. Whenever you're prepared to leave, just let me know. Tian nodded. In the years that followed, Tian sought to learn all he could from the Primal Monarch, yet he soon realized there was nothing more the Primal Monarch could teach him. Despite this, Tian chose not to waste their remaining time together. In the blink of an eye, 9 years passed. I am ready to leave. On a certain day, Tian approached the Primal Monarch to declare his departure. The Primal Monarch nodded and said, before you leave, promise me one thing. What? That you will never submit to anyone, especially to heavens will, ever again and become a being worthy of the monarch's bloodline. Also, don't come back to the primal expanse unless you have fully awakened my bloodline. You never told me how to awaken it even though I have asked many times, Tian frowned. Because you didn't need such knowledge back then. The Primal Monarch shook his head, and he continued speaking, anyway, to fully awaken the monarch's bloodline, you will need to absorb the blood essence of 9 different beasts with a supreme grade bloodline. Supreme grade blood essence? And 9 of them? That'll take an eternity. Tian exclaimed. There are barely a dozen predators in the entire primal expanse who possess a supreme grade bloodline, and asking even one of them for their blood essence was nearly impossible, let alone 9. Moreover, he had to accomplish this task in the human world, where the likelihood of finding even 9 entities with a supreme-grade bloodline was slim, if not non-existent. You're asking for too much. You might as well tell me never to return. Tian sighed out loud. Are you going to give up without even trying? I didn't know I'd raised such a useless quitter. The Primal Monarch sneered in disdain. Tian clenched his fists and gnashed his jaw. Just wait, you old booger. Not only will I awaken my bloodline, but I'll even take your position as the Primal Monarch and force you into retirement the next time I come back, so prepare yourself. Ha ha ha. You'll take my position? It's a promise. I cannot wait, you snotty little brat. Shortly after, the Primal Monarch opened a rift to the divine heaven, and Tian stepped into it without looking back. After digesting Tian's memories, Yuan looked at the Primal Monarch with emotional eyes. Sorry, but I don't think I can fulfill my promise to you right now. Yuan spoke with a bittersweet smile. Well, this won't be the first time you've disappointed me. The Primal Monarch shrugged. He continued, not only did you fail to awaken your bloodline, but you've managed to weaken it to its weakest state. It'll awaken the bloodline this time for sure, Yuan said with a resolute expression on his face. However, the Primal Monarch shook his head and said, even if you consume 9 blood essence right now, you won't be able to awaken your Monarch bloodline because it is still in its dormant state. Huh? What do you mean? Yuan raised an eyebrow. You've managed to activate your bloodline, but it's only royal grade, so you're not receiving any actual benefits from it. Even your Immortal Monarch's dominion is just a technique, not your bloodline's ability. How do I awaken my bloodline then? The Primal Monarch suddenly opened a rift and said, follow me. Wait a moment. Yuan turned to look at Yingzi. Thank you for everything. He retrieved 1,000 meat skewers and handed them to Yingzi, who accepted them in a daze. You too. Yuan gave some skewers to the divine fox of grand prophecy before entering the rift with the Primal Monarch. On the other side of the rift lay the Primal Monarch's own dimension, the place where Tian had once lived. The world within this dimension was as vast as the primal expanse, but only Tian and the Primal Monarch inhabited it at this moment. Yuan surveyed his surroundings, feeling a sense of nostalgia. Sometime later, the Primal Monarch spoke. I knew you would return one day, so I prepared this for you, but I never anticipated you would return in such a state. He showed Yuan his palm, where a small bottle rested. This is. Yuan swallowed nervously after seeing the drop of blood inside. You made a second blood essence? Most beings don't even dare to create blood essence, fearing the harm it could cause them. Those brave enough to attempt it would only produce a single drop in their lifetime, as that was their limit. Yet, the Primal Monarch had created 2 drops. If you consume this blood essence, your Monarch's bloodline will awaken its true prowess. Yuan accepted the Primal Monarch's blood essence. Thank you. Yuan tossed the bottle into his spatial ring, causing the Primal Monarch to raise an eyebrow. What are you doing? Saving it for later? Why? But I am only a spirit sovereign now, and I was an immortal the last time I consumed your blood essence. That's true, but you also didn't have the Monarch's bloodline back then. You already have the Monarch's bloodline this time, so the requirements won't be as harsh. Is that so? Then I'll consume it now. Yuan retrieved the blood essence. Chapter 1636 Awakening Immortal Monarch's Bloodline. Chapter 1636 Awakening Immortal Monarch's Bloodline. Yuan stared at the blood essence in his grasp with a nervous gaze. Despite the Primal Monarch's assurance that it was safe to consume at his cultivation level, he couldn't help but feel uneasy. After all, the blood essence belonged to an entity likely far stronger than even the dragon ancestor, whose blood essence he also possessed and has yet to consume due to his lack of cultivation. Are you really scared of a single drop of blood? When did you become such a coward? The Primal Monarch casually mocked. A single drop of blood? Is that how little you view your own blood essence? Yuan shook his head as he opened the bottle. After taking a deep breath, Yuan tilted his head backward and poured the blood essence onto his tongue. The blood essence immediately melted into his tongue. Yuan immediately sat down and began cultivating in silence. He could feel his body burning, almost as if his blood was boiling, but it wasn't as intense as his first experience as Tian. A few days later, Yejun's bloodline had ascended by 2 grades. Unlike treasures and techniques, bloodlines had only 4 known grades, with the vast majority being royal grade. After royal grade came imperial grade. In the human world, those with imperial grade bloodlines were regarded as nobles, hailing from the most elite bloodlines. In the beast world, they were considered royalty. Above imperial grade was divine grade. Those with a divine grade bloodline were destined to rise above all others, standing as emperors among their kind. If one searched the entire 9 heavens, there would be less than 100 entities with a divine grade bloodline. The highest known grade of bloodline was the supreme grade bloodline. Only the most powerful entities, such as dragon goddess Yejun, the primordial phoenix, and the dragon ancestor, possessed such bloodlines. They are so rare that one could count all of them with 2 hands. Only divine grade? I was expecting it to reach supreme grade. Yuan mused afterward. The monarch's bloodline is, without doubt, supreme grade at the very least. However, you've only partially awakened your bloodline. If you want your bloodline to reach supreme grade, you'll need to consume supreme grade blood essences to truly awaken your bloodline's full potential. The primal monarch said to him. I need to consume 9 different supreme grade blood essence, correct? Can I assume that your blood essence doesn't count? The primal monarch nodded. My blood essence won't count, so you still need 9 more. The dragon ancestor should have a supreme grade bloodline, so that's 1 down. If I count the primordial phoenix's blood essence in Feng Feng's possession, that's 2. What are your plans now? The primal monarch suddenly asked him. Will you be returning to the human world now? No, there's still something I must do here, unless you can help me. Yuan retrieved Feng Yuxiang's egg and showed it to him. Can you do something about this? What do you want me to do, exactly? If you want me to awaken the phoenix inside forcefully, I can do that, but it'll injure the phoenix. Can you speed up her recovery? The primal monarch glared at the egg and said, as far as I can tell, the phoenix inside is already fully recovered. Really? Then why isn't she coming out? I was told that she would come out once she fully recovers. I'm afraid I don't have an answer to your question. If you want to know, you should visit the phoenix's territory. Yuan nodded. That was my plan from the start, but it's a little far, and I can't spend too much time in this place. Do you think you can send me there? The Eternal Phoenix Domain, right? Yes, that's right. I can send you there. What about your friend? My friend? Yuan raised an eyebrow. That shadow dweller you've been traveling with. She's still at the Mystic Valley. I thought she'd left by now. Yuan muttered in a low voice. After taking some time to ponder, Yuan said, let me talk to her for a bit. The primal monarch flicked his arm, casually creating a rift that led him directly back to the spot where he had left from. When Yuan returned to the Mystic Valley, he noticed that Yingzi hadn't moved an inch from her spot. As for the divine fox of grand prophecy, she had disappeared somewhere, presumably to recover after exhausting herself to divine the primal monarch's location. Don't tell me that you've been waiting for me. Yuan looked at Yingzi with a raised eyebrow. She nodded and said, well, I still don't understand what it means to be a human. What if I never returned? He asked. If you hadn't returned by the time I finished all of the meat skewers, I would have left, she calmly said. Yuan glanced at the number of meat skewers Yingzi had left. He had been gone for 5 days, yet she had only eaten a little over 100 skewers. It was clear to him that she had purposely slowed down, waiting for his return. Well, I am going to visit the Eternal Phoenix Domain now. Want to come along? I won't be able to protect you, though, she said. That's fine. I can protect myself now. Are you going to be visiting the Phoenix's territory in that guise? They'll attack you before you can even get close. The primal monarch suddenly said to him. You're right, and pretending to be a phoenix is too risky. If I cannot be a dragon or a phoenix, I might as well go there as a human. Yuan deactivated his transformation for the first time since he came to the primal expanse, and his human scent immediately started to fill the air. The primals within the Mystic Valley quickly picked up his scent and immediately began rushing toward his location. Despite the approaching threat, Yuan remained calm. He took a deep breath and spoke in a commanding voice, "I don't have time to play with you lot." Scram. Though his voice was barely louder than usual, it sent a powerful ripple through the entire Mystic Valley. The moment the primals heard his voice, which resounded inside their heads like a thunderclap, they immediately turned and fled in the opposite direction. Chapter 1637 Forbidden Technique. Chapter 1637 Forbidden Technique. "I'm ready to visit the Eternal Phoenix Domain," Yuan said to the Primal Monarch after chasing away the primals. The Primal Monarch nodded and said, "Don't expect me to protect you if you get in trouble there." He smiled, "It'll be fine. Thanks for worrying." "Who the hell is worried?" The Primal Monarch sneered before opening a rift that led directly to the Eternal Phoenix Domain. "Can you hold these for me with your treasure?" Yingzi handed him the meat skewers she didn't eat. Yuan nodded and stored the skewers in his spatial ring before stepping into the rift, with Yingzi following closely behind. Upon emerging from the rift, Yuan found himself standing before a vast land that resembled the Phoenix Ascendancy Plateau. His human scent instantly spread and attracted the attention of nearby primals. "This is the perfect opportunity for me to test out my new powers while I wait for the phoenixes to show up." Yuan thought to himself and patiently waited for the primals to show up. A few moments later, a massive purple-feathered bird, its wings large enough to cover an entire mountain, came diving toward Yuan's location. This bird exuded an aura equal to that of a divine emperor cultivator. Yuan calmly gazed at the incoming bird. Once it was close enough, Yuan muttered in a nonchalant tone, "Die." In the next moment, the bird's movements suddenly slowed, and then, without warning, it began to fall lifelessly, plummeting straight into the ground. Yingzi's eyes widened in shock as she witnessed Yuan kill the primal with nothing more than a simple voice command. So it actually works. Yuan mumbled to himself. He had never used the Immortal Monarch's dominion in such a manner in his previous life, so this was something new to him. More primals appeared shortly after, but they also dropped like flies as Yuan commanded them to die with nothing more than his voice. Although this power initially seemed limitless, Yuan began to feel fatigued after killing several more primals in this manner, and it was mental fatigue that couldn't be healed even with his powerful soul cultivation technique. It was also apparent that the stronger his target, the more it drained his energy and exhausted him. "Let's try something else now." Yuan suddenly made a grasping motion toward the corpses scattered on the ground and muttered, "Condense." In response, the corpses began to disintegrate into their purest form, spiritual energy, before condensing and forming what is known as a monster core. In the primal expanse, entities do not leave behind a monster core because they cultivate through their chaotic heart. Yet, Yuan had managed to transform their corpses, their very chaotic hearts, into monster cores through his unique power. Absolute core creation, rank, celestial, mastery level, max, description, allows the user to create perfect monster cores from beast corpses. "What is that?" Yingzi asked as she stared at the monster cores with a curious gaze. This was her first time seeing a monster core. The primals and predators in the human world don't have chaotic hearts. Instead, they have a monster core, which you're looking at right now. Yuan explained. They don't have chaotic hearts. Yingzi muttered in disbelief, unable to fathom such a possibility, as it was impossible for them to survive without a chaotic heart. "Do you want it?" "Here you go." Yuan tossed the monster cores to her. Once the monster cores were in her grasp, Yingzi inspected them with great interest. Meanwhile, Yuan shifted his focus to the approaching primals. "Although I can't turn them into monster cores while they are still alive, I can do this instead." When his next target was close enough, Yuan pointed 2 fingers at it and muttered, "Extract." The targeted primal suddenly sensed an overwhelming dread as it felt its longevity rapidly depleting, its life force draining away uncontrollably. However, its longevity wasn't disappearing into thin air. Instead, it was being used to form a blood essence. Sure enough, just moments later, Yuan successfully extracted the primal's blood essence. Forbidden blood extraction, rank, celestial, mastery level, max, description, forcefully extracts blood essence from your target. This forbidden technique is greatly frowned upon by the heavens. Using this technique may invoke heaven's tribulation. Yuan swallowed nervously at the description. A technique that could invoke heaven's tribulation just by using it? Luckily, I am still in the primal expanse, where heaven has no influence. Yuan thought to himself. When she realized what Yuan had just done, Yingzi wasn't merely shocked, she was absolutely terrified. The ability to forcefully extract another's blood essence was a terrifying technique, one that could plunge the entire primal expanse into chaos and turmoil. Seeing Yingzi's fearful expression, Yuan smiled apologetically and said, "I'm sorry if that scared you. I was just testing it out. I won't do that again." Yingzi silently acknowledged his words, but the fear in her heart couldn't be dispelled so quickly. Meanwhile, several powerhouses had also witnessed Yuan's terrifying powers from afar and were left in shock. That human just used the Primal Monarch's powers. Who is that human? Where did he come from? Did he come to our territory to cause trouble, or is he here for something else? Despite their status as powerhouses, these individuals didn't dare to show themselves before Yuan, fearing that he might forcefully extract their blood essences. Let's just stand by and observe him a little longer before deciding what to do with him. Yeah, let's do that. Meanwhile, Yuan continued killing the primals who approached him because of his scent. However, he refrained from using the monarch's power unless necessary. What's taking them so long to show up? They should have been aware of my presence the moment I showed up in their territory. Yuan wondered inwardly, unaware that they were purposefully avoiding him. Sometime later, a human-shaped figure approached Yuan, but this person was not one of the powerhouses. Chapter 1638 One Condition. Chapter 1638 One Condition. Hey, you with the weird scent. A voice suddenly called out to Yuan. Yuan turned toward the source of the voice, spotting a young lady with long crimson hair, amber-colored eyes, and fierce facial features. About time someone shows up, Yuan mumbled after seeing this young phoenix. Who the hell are you? And why are you causing a scene in our territory? The young lady questioned, seemingly unaware that Yuan was a human. It was well known that humans couldn't use their powers in the primal expanse, and the fact that no human had appeared in their world for millions of years left the young lady unaware of Yuan's true identity. When the powerhouses realized who this young lady was, they began panicking. What the hell is she doing over there? We need to intervene before that human steals her blood essence. Meanwhile, Yuan faced the young lady and spoke, I have some business with the Primordial Phoenix. The young lady frowned and said, the Primordial Phoenix isn't someone you can meet just because. Then how can I meet them? The young lady narrowed her eyes and said, first and foremost, you must identify yourself. What bloodline do you have? I am not familiar with your scent. Also, we need to know your reason for seeking out the Primordial Phoenix. I'm Yuan, a human, and I need the Primordial Phoenix's help with something. Huh? A human? The young lattice eyes widened with surprise after hearing such an unexpected answer. To be messing with me, you obviously don't care about meeting the Primordial Phoenix, she sneered in disdain. Why would I be messing with you? Can't you tell by my scent? There's a reason the primals have been swarming me. The young lady was speechless. At that moment, two more figures appeared, a middle-aged man and a woman, both exuding an aura equivalent to a cultivator at the god Ascension realm. As soon as they arrived, they positioned themselves in front of the young lady, as if shielding her with their bodies. Seniors? Why are you here? The young lady was surprised by the appearance of these two powerhouses. We should be asking you that. Why did you come here when we told everyone to remain in their home? You did? I didn't get the word. The young lady shrugged. Anyway, I came here because I noticed a weird scent coming from this guy. He claims to be a human, but I don't believe him. The two powerhouses turned to look at Yuan with deep frowns on their faces. What is your relationship with the Primal Monarch? The woman asked in a nervous tone. What? The Primal Monarch? The young lattice eyes widened. He's my adoptive father. Yuan calmly responded. The Primal Monarch adopted a human? The middle-aged man exclaimed, his face filled with disbelief. Then are you here on behalf of the Primal Monarch? The woman continued to ask. He shook his head. No, I came here because I personally have business with the Primordial Phoenix. What sort of business? Yuan retrieved Feng Yuxiang's egg and said, I was told that they would be able to help my friend here. The phoenixes before him trembled, their faces filled with shock when they saw the egg in Yuan's grasp. That is. Where the hell did you get that? The young lady cried out loud. That shell. It can't be. The middle-aged man swallowed nervously. We must notify Her Majesty immediately. The woman exclaimed. Yuan raised an eyebrow at their reaction and asked, does that mean I get to meet the Primordial Phoenix? However, before the phoenixes could respond, Yuan suddenly felt a strong, overwhelming pressure appear out of nowhere. Yuan tilted his head upward to see a massive, majestic phoenix hovering above them. When the phoenixes noticed this newcomer, they immediately lowered their heads and greeted it. We greet your majesty. The Primordial Phoenix. Yuan recognized the Primordial Phoenix's appearance since she looked exactly like Feng Yuming in her beast form. In the next moment, the Primordial Phoenix began to shrink, transforming into the form of a human. The Primordial Phoenix took the form of a stunning woman, tall and slender, with long, fiery red hair cascading down her back, nearly reaching her feet. Her presence radiated a majestic aura, one that commanded respect, like that of an empress. She looks just like Feng Yuming. Yuan was startled by how closely this Primordial Phoenix resembled Feng Yuming. Yet, it was clear that she wasn't Feng Yuming, but another distinct Primordial Phoenix. The Primordial Phoenix descended gracefully, halting just before Yuan, her sharp gaze locking onto the egg in his hands. After a brief, tense silence, she shifted her eyes to Yuan and asked in a calm, yet commanding tone, who are you? Yuan, a human from the human world. What is your relationship with the one inside this shell? We're companions. Then you're not much of a companion, letting her end up in such a state, the Primordial Phoenix remarked, her tone laced with disdain. Yuan narrowed his eyes and said, you don't even know what happened. That's irrelevant. Whatever. I'm not here to argue but to see if you can heal her. The Primordial Phoenix looked at the egg and said, of course, I can heal her. However, why should I do that for you? Did you think I would be willing to heal her just because she's a phoenix? I was hopeful, but if you're unwilling to heal her, just let me know so I can stop wasting my time here. How dare you speak to Her Majesty in such a tone? Even the Primal Monarch addresses her with respect, the middle-aged man shouted, his voice brimming with anger. The Primordial Phoenix narrowed her eyes at him. After a brief silence, she spoke, her voice calm yet firm, I am willing to heal her. But only under one condition, you must leave her with us in the Eternal Phoenix domain. Yuan frowned after hearing about her condition. Are you serious? Did it sound like I was joking? The Primordial Phoenix replied, her voice cold and unwavering. Chapter 1639 Primordial Phoenix's Outburst. Chapter 1639 Primordial Phoenix's Outburst. If I heal her and let her continue traveling with you, she will undoubtedly be hurt again, perhaps even face death. The Primordial Phoenix explained the reason behind her condition, her tone resolute. In that case, I would rather she stay here with us, where she will be close to her own bloodline and, more importantly, where she'll be safe. Hearing this, Yuan calmly replied, you're right. It is dangerous to be with me, and there's a high chance she'll get hurt again in the future. However, it's her decision whether she wants to continue traveling with me. Neither you nor I have the right to decide her path for her. Moreover, she doesn't even belong in this world. It's unreasonable to ask her to stay. You speak so confidently despite knowing nothing. The Primordial Phoenix sneered. Why don't you enlighten me, then? You're not worth it. Yuan shrugged, then I guess we have nothing left to talk about. He put Feng Yuxiang away and prepared to leave. Where do you think you're going? This isn't a place where you can come and go as you please, the Primordial Phoenix said sharply, her voice echoing with authority. Leave that phoenix behind, and only then will I allow you to leave. With those words, she unleashed a powerful pressure, instantly restricting Yuan's movements. The primordial phoenix was undoubtedly one of the strongest beings Yuan had encountered so far, second only to the primal monarch. If compared to a cultivator, her power would rival that of a cultivation god, an entity that stood at the very peak of the cultivation world. Sensing the primordial phoenix's overwhelming presence, Yuan instantly realized that he was powerless against her, and that not even the monarch's power could save him. However, Yuan remained calm, confident that the primal monarch was watching everything unfold and wouldn't allow him to die. If you think the primal monarch will save you, think again, the primordial phoenix said, her eyes gleaming with certainty. He and I have an agreement, that he won't interfere with anything that happens within my territory, no matter what. She had guessed the obvious reason behind his calm demeanor. If he does show up to save you, I am willing to fight him to death. Yuan was speechless. He couldn't understand why the primordial phoenix was so determined to keep Feng Yuxiang in the eternal phoenix domain with them. Before Yuan could respond, she continued, or perhaps you believe I can't kill you because that isn't your real body? Unfortunately for you, my flames can burn anything, even a body crafted from your soul. Her voice carried a cold certainty that sent a chill through the air. Yuan's eyebrows twitched at her words. She can tell that this isn't my real body? He cried inwardly. As a curtsy to the primal monarch, I will give you one last warning. Leave behind that phoenix. Otherwise, I completely erase you from existence. Suddenly, flames erupted around them, encircling Yuan and trapping him within a blazing sphere of fire. The intense heat pressed in from all sides, leaving him no escape. Seeing this, Yuan spoke out loud, I know you're seeing this, you old booger. Are you really going to let me die? It's useless. The primal monarch won't interfere. The primordial phoenix sneered at his futile attempt. However, a voice suddenly resounded, you were quite confident that you'd be fine right before I sent you off, so what is this, you little brat? The primordial phoenix frowned when she realized it was the primal monarch's voice. Primal monarch, I won't hurt him as long as he leaves behind the phoenix. The primal monarch then spoke, but not to the primordial phoenix, you heard her, brat. It would save me a lot of headaches if you leave behind that phoenix. Humph. I'd rather die. Yuan sneered. It's just a phoenix. I'm sure you can easily acquire more when you return to your world. Just a phoenix. She's much more than that to me. If you're not going to help, just leave. You useless old booger. After a brief silence, a deep sigh echoed through the fiery enclosure. Suddenly, a rift tore open beside Yuan, and the primal monarch emerged from it. What do you think you are doing, primal monarch? We had an agreement. Don't tell me you plan on breaking it. The primordial phoenix roared in anger. I know we had an agreement, the primal monarch responded, his voice calm yet firm. But I cannot allow my one and only son, since the beginning of time, to die here. He paused, his gaze steady on the primordial phoenix. Why are you so determined to take his companion from him, anyway? Even if she dies by his side, what does that have to do with you? It's not like she's the only phoenix out there. The primordial phoenix trembled at his words, her composure faltering. After a moment, she responded with a fierce intensity, it has everything to do with me. You're not the only one trying to save your child here, primal monarch. That phoenix is my daughter, my oldest. What? Your daughter? Yuan's eyes widened with shock after hearing the primordial phoenix's unexpected claim. Feng is her daughter? How is that even possible? He cried inwardly. And unlike you, who merely adopted that human, she's my biological daughter, the primordial phoenix continued, her voice trembling with emotion, revealing the feelings she had been holding back all this time. Yuan stared at the primordial phoenix, his jaw slack in disbelief. He could sense the truth in her words, her emotions were raw and genuine, leaving no room for doubt. However, Yuan couldn't fathom how Feng Yuxiang could be her child. Had Feng Yuxiang somehow traveled to the 9 heavens, much like he had accidentally found himself in the primal expanse. So she was your child, huh? That explains a lot. The primal monarch mused. The primordial phoenix pointed at Yuan, her voice rising with fury as she shouted, I won't allow my daughter to stay with someone who let her nearly die, even if you are the primal monarch's son. Her fierce gaze burned with such intensity that Yuan felt as if his entire body was engulfed in flames. Coupled with her harsh words, he felt a deep sense of guilt, as though he was in the wrong. Chapter 1640 A Vicious Curse. Chapter 1640 A Vicious Curse. Since you're her mother, this changes everything. However, that doesn't mean I'm willing to let you take her away from me. Yuan said to the primordial phoenix after a moment of silence. He continued, how about this? Why don't you help your daughter recover first, then we can discuss her future together. I promise that I won't leave before the two of you have a conversation. I really don't want to fight you. Humph. You don't want to fight me? You aren't even capable of doing so. The primordial phoenix sneered. She turned to look at the primal monarch and continued, although you haven't done anything yet, I am still going to consider this a breach of our agreement, primal monarch. Does this mean you have given up on trying to kill my son? That will depend on my daughter's testimony. If I find out that he's mistreated her even slightly, I will not hesitate to kill him even if it's the last thing I do, she responded in a cold voice. The primordial phoenix removed the flames shortly after and said to Yuan, follow me. She created a rift and entered it. Go ahead. I won't be coming along. The primal monarch said. All right. Yuan nodded and followed the primordial phoenix into the rift. Ingzi, who had been watching in the background, silently followed him. As for the three phoenixes. So the phoenix inside that egg was my eldest sister, huh? No wonder I felt an odd sense of familiarity with her. The young lady mused, her voice softening as the realization dawned on her. I can't believe that the first princess has returned after so long. The woman muttered in a dazed voice. Things are going to get chaotic here very soon. I need to notify everyone of the situation as soon as possible. The middle-aged man sighed. Once Yuan stepped through the rift, he found himself in a vast, breathtaking garden that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. The air was thick with the fragrance of medicinal plants, all flourishing with vibrant yang energy. Put my daughter on that altar. The primordial phoenix pointed to the altar covered with complex array symbols in the distance. Yuan nodded and approached the altar before retrieving Feng Yuxiang's egg and placing it in the center of the altar. Get back, said the primordial phoenix as she stood before the altar. Yuan stepped back and waited for her next move. However, the primordial phoenix didn't do anything besides silently staring at the egg with a motherly gaze. A few moments later, she suddenly frowned and roared, which bastard placed such a vicious curse on her? That happened to her before we met, so I don't know the details. Yuan quickly shook his head when she turned to look at him for answers. Just so you know, I've been working to get that curse removed since we met, he added. Humph. The reason why she hasn't emerged from her shell is because of this damned curse. The primordial phoenix revealed with a cold sneer. Unfortunately, I cannot do anything until we completely remove the curse, or I risk injuring her, even killing her. Do you have a way to remove the curse? Yuan asked. We can remove the curse with the help of a treasure. However, we don't have that treasure at our territory. But you know where it is, right? The treasure is called the Sacred Chalice of Purification, and it is in the possession of those annoying dragons at the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, she said. The Divine Dragon Sanctuary? Yuan didn't expect to hear this name again. It's a rank 1 territory, one that rivals our Eternal Phoenix domain, controlled by the dragon race. The primordial phoenix sighed, her frustration evident. I would retrieve the treasure myself, but doing so would undoubtedly spark an all-out war between our territories. I can get the treasure. Yuan suddenly volunteered. She looked at him and sneered, You? What can you possibly achieve with that level of cultivation? Your monarch's power is useless against those whose strength far exceeds your own. Her tone was sharp, dripping with condescension. Must everything be solved with violence and force? Yuan shook his head. He proceeded to transform, revealing his dragon form to her. You. The primordial phoenix's frown deepened as she sensed the unmistakable scent of a dragon exuding from his body. This was the first time such a scent had breached her sacred territory, her private sanctuary. Her displeasure was evident, her gaze hardening with irritation. "I'll go there as a fellow dragon," Yuan said with a calm smile, ignoring her displeased glares. "Even if you go there as a dragon, it won't do you any good," the primordial phoenix scoffed. "The sacred chalice of purification isn't just any treasure, it's one of their most valuable, revered as sacred. It has never left their territory before, and they guard it like their life depends on it." "That does sound troublesome." Yuan mumbled to himself after hearing this. After a moment of silence, he shrugged. "Well, I'll figure something out, probably." Why would my daughter follow someone as foolish as you?" The primordial phoenix sighed. "Then do you have a better suggestion?" Yuan inquired. The primordial phoenix remained silent. "Eventually," she said, "even the primal monarch might not be able to acquire the treasure from them without a fight, so I really have no idea how you're going to do it. However, it's still better than suddenly going to war with them, not that I am afraid of them or anything like that. We've been trying to conquer or eliminate each other since the beginning of time," the primordial phoenix continued coldly. "We've gone to war more than once, even for reasons far more insignificant than this. All we need is time to prepare, and that's exactly what we'll be doing while you do your thing. So don't worry. Even if you fail to secure the treasure, we'll strike when the time is right." Yuan swallowed nervously. The primordial phoenix's expression was deadly serious as she spoke of going to war with the dragons, all for the sake of reviving her daughter. Her resolve was unwavering, showing just how far she was willing to go for her child's life. Chapter 1641 Human from Back Then. Chapter 1641 Human from Back Then, "I'll do whatever it takes to acquire the treasure. Just don't do anything reckless and foolish before I return." Yuan shook his head at the primordial phoenix's eagerness to go to war with the dragons. "Who the hell are you to tell me what to do?" The primordial phoenix sneered. She continued, 10 years. If you haven't returned with the treasure by then, we will go there and get it ourselves." 10 years? Yuan smiled inwardly after hearing this generous number. "I only plan to stay in this world for another year at most. As if I need 10 years. All right. 10 years. He agreed to her terms. "Anyway, I will need some time to prepare before I head to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. If I go there in my current state, with an incomplete chaotic heart, they will definitely suspect my identity." The primordial phoenix narrowed her gaze on him, seemingly pondering something. "Since you brought my daughter back to us, we will assist you in that regard," she suddenly said. Really? Yuan wasn't expecting this at all and was pleasantly surprised. "It's only a single chaotic heart and it's your first, so it won't take much effort." "Then I will take up on your offer," Yuan said. "By the way, I have been meaning to ask you this, but how did Feng, your daughter, end up in the human world? Are you seriously asking me that? Do you even know anything about the primal expanse? Are you really the primal monarch's son?" The primordial phoenix suddenly bombarded him with questions. "Now that you mentioned it, I don't really know much about the primal expanse." Yuan suddenly came to this realization. Despite spending over 100 years in the primal expanse, Yuan hadn't taken the time to learn much about its intricacies. Instead, he had devoted nearly all his focus to training. "I never anticipated that I would be leaving the primal expanse so soon back then, so I never really paid attention to the world, and that old booger never told me much about the world either." Yuan sighed inwardly. "Did the primal monarch really not tell you anything about our world? How long have you been living in the primal expanse?" The primordial phoenix asked. "I came to the primal expanse by accident a little over a year ago," he said. "Only a year ago? And you'd become the primal monarch's son in that little time? Something isn't adding up here." The primordial phoenix frowned. "It's a little complicated, but this isn't my first time to the primal expanse. Elaborate. Since she's Feng's mother, I guess telling her the truth is fine. She'd find out eventually, anyway. With that in mind, Yuan explained his situation to her. I lived in the primal expanse for a little bit in my previous life, he calmly explained. The primordial phoenix's eyes widened after hearing this. Your previous life. Reincarnation? Wait a minute. The primordial phoenix suddenly began approaching him, her movements graceful yet deliberate. When she stood directly in front of him, she leaned in, bringing her face so close to his that their lips were just a breath apart, almost touching. Her gaze was fierce, searing into his face with such intensity that it felt as though her eyes alone could burn him. The heat of her presence was almost overwhelming, like a fire just beneath the surface. After a tense moment of silence, she abruptly stepped back, her eyes widening in shock as she cried out, "Why you? No wonder you felt so familiar. You're that human from back then. The one who appeared out of nowhere and caused chaos in the primal expanse for 100 years before vanishing just as suddenly." Her voice was filled with both recognition and disbelief. "HM? You know me, Tian?" Yuan asked, his brow furrowing as he tried to recall the primordial phoenix from Tian's memories. However, he had fought so many phoenixes during that time that it was impossible to pinpoint her for certain. "Who in the primal expanse hasn't heard of you back then?" the primordial phoenix sneered. "Though I never met you personally, I heard all about your so-called feats, how you went from territory to territory, beating up the owners individually." Her voice was laced with a mixture of disbelief and frustration as she recalled the stories of his chaotic past. "As a matter of fact, you also made a mess in the Eternal Phoenix domain back then," the primordial phoenix continued, her voice rising with frustration. "Unfortunately, I was away when you invaded our territory. By the time I returned, you had already disappeared from the primal expanse, so I wasn't able to exact revenge." Her eyes burned with fury as she recalled the memory of returning home, only to find her people beaten to a pulp and their treasures plundered. The humiliation and rage she had felt at that moment resurfaced, igniting her anger once more. "Oh, that was just my training," Yuan said as he reminisced the past. "Then why did you take our treasures? It requires a lot of resources to form chaotic hearts, you know?" "Anyway," Yuan continued calmly, "while I did take your treasures, I didn't kill any of the phoenixes. Besides, you guys were the aggressors. I was simply passing through your territory when your people attacked me first, so you can't really blame me for defending myself." The primordial phoenix trembled, but she eventually stopped. "That explains why the primal monarch never showed up to stop you." "Whatever," the primordial phoenix suddenly scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. "That's all in the past, and I'm not petty enough to hold a grudge over something that happened millions of years ago." Her tone softened slightly, though the tension in the air lingered. "Thanks. Now, can you tell me about your daughter's situation?" Yuan returned to the topic. "Before that, you should learn more about the primal expanse," she said. "In that case, allow me to explain." A third voice suddenly resounded. "I knew you hadn't left yet." The primordial phoenix sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. "But to snoop around in my private world. I didn't realize you were this shameless, primal monarch." Sure enough, a moment later, the primal monarch appeared before them, stepping through an entrance he had created himself with a faint smile on his face. Chapter 1642 The Connection Between Two Worlds. Chapter 1642 The Connection Between Two Worlds. Shameless? I am just trying to ensure my son's safety. That's all. I have no interest in you or your world. The primal monarch shrugged. "Ha! Do you think I am the type to go back on my words? I am nowhere as shameless as you, primal monarch. Anyway, you had plenty of chances to explain to him before, so why didn't you do so?" Good question." The primal monarch began pondering with a serious face. A few moments later, he had a look of realization and said, "I remember now. I forgot to tell him." "Are you serious?" The primordial phoenix frowned. He shrugged. "My mind was occupied with other things back then, and teaching him about our world wasn't a priority, so I never gave it any thought. Unbelievable. Yuan muttered. Anyway, let me make it up by explaining our world to you now. The Primal Monarch looked at Yuan and went on to explain the connection between the primal expanse and the 9 heavens. As you already know by now, the beasts of your world are originally from the primal expanse. Of course, not all of them came from the primal expanse, but a good portion of them are. Now the question is, how does that work? How did they enter your world? But before I answer that question, I have one for you. What happens when a human dies in your world? The Primal Monarch faced Yuan with a profound smile. Well, as long as their soul isn't destroyed, they will eventually be reincarnated. Without the memories of their past lives, obviously. The Primal Monarch nodded and continued asking, then what do you think happens to beasts after their death? Yuan pondered for a moment before responding, unlike humans, beasts don't reincarnate. Unless they have a unique bloodline, they simply return to nature, being part of the world as spiritual energy. You're partially correct, and you're missing a few pieces. The Primal Monarch spoke. Just like humans, beasts also reincarnate, he proceeded to explain. However, their process is vastly different. When a beast dies, as long as its chaotic heart, or core, isn't destroyed or consumed, it returns to nature as chaotic essence in the primal expanse and spiritual energy in your world. Over time, that energy will give birth to a new beast, whether by natural birth or through another beast. Unlike humans, who rely on their own bodily fluids to breed and procreate, beasts only need spiritual energy to do so. There are 2 ways they acquire this energy, by receiving it from another being or by absorbing the natural energy around them. Most prefer to use nature's energy, as it is both the most convenient and abundant source. However, those who wish to maintain or strengthen their bloodline's purity and strength typically acquire it from another individual. Yuan absorbed the information with a serious expression, carefully processing every word. When the Primal Monarch mentioned the beast's method of breeding through spiritual energy, Yuan's thoughts drifted to Lan Yingying and how she had requested his spiritual energy to conceive her future child. While it wasn't unheard of for beasts to conceive using a human's spiritual energy, it was incredibly rare due to the unpredictability of the results. The fusion of human and beast energy often led to unforeseen complications, making such occurrences highly unusual and risky. However, there are special races that can conceive with a human's spiritual energy without any complications, and Lan Yingying belongs to that category. Now then, let's finally get to the main topic, the Primal Monarch said suddenly. In the primal expanse, for reasons still unknown, when beings here perish, they don't always return to nature as chaotic essence. Instead, they sometimes transform into spiritual energy and drift into your world, where they are reborn. Huh? Yuan's eyes widened at this information. He looked at the primordial phoenix and muttered, "Does that mean your daughter died in the primal expanse and was reincarnated in the human world?" She nodded, yes, but due to our unique bloodline, our reincarnation process is somewhat identical to that of humans. For instance, when a human reincarnates, they will always return as humans. If I were to die right now, I would eventually come back as a primordial phoenix. However, if there are no interferences, a dragon could reincarnate as a snake or even a pig in their next life. In simpler terms, we will naturally retain our core identity and bloodline no matter how many times we are reborn, as long as there are no interferences. Therefore, no matter how many times she dies, my daughters will always be my daughter. I see. Yuan muttered. By the way, if you didn't know, the primal expanse existed long before the human world even came into the picture. The Primal Monarch suddenly said. I have another question. If a beast dies in the human world, is there a chance that they could return to the primal expanse? Yuan asked. No. Once one leaves the primal expanse, they will never return, at least not in that fashion. Of course, they can still return the same way you did. How often does that happen? As often as humans show up. Also, if a beast without a chaotic heart visits the primal expanse, it will be as powerless as a human. After all, only those with a chaotic heart or the monarch's bloodline could cultivate and utilize chaotic essence. That explains why I am able to use my powers even without a chaotic heart. Yuan mused to himself. That said, a beast born in the human world can still form a chaotic heart, so they're not completely hopeless. The Primal Monarch added. Sometime later, Yuan said, I understand how the primal expanse and the 9 heavens are connected, but I still don't know why. Unfortunately, even I do not know why. The Primal Monarch shook his head. What about your bloodline? Just what exactly is the Monarch's bloodline? The Primordial Phoenix stared at the Primal Monarch with intrigue. Although the beings in the Primal Expanse understand and have accepted the Primal Monarch's powers, nobody knows how or why such a bloodline exists. Chapter 1643-6 in total. Chapter 1643-6 in total, what is the Monarch's bloodline, huh? The Primal Monarch looked at Yuan with a profound smile on his face. After a moment of silence, he responded with a casual shrug, no clue. Huh? Yuan's face became dumbfounded. I am the first of my kind, and it has been that way since the beginning of time. I do not know why I was born or my purpose. I merely exist. The Primordial Phoenix stared at the Primal Monarch with a pondering expression. As he had claimed, he had existed since the beginning of time before any other race was born. In fact, there are speculations that he had been created alongside the Primal Expanse itself, an ancient being intertwined with the very fabric of the world. No one truly knows the full extent of the Primal Monarch's power, as he has never revealed it. Throughout the ages, he has remained detached from worldly affairs, rarely interacting with its residents or intervening in their matters. He was a silent ruler, observing the world from a position so high that others could hardly comprehend it, his presence akin to that of a god. He also possessed an unrivaled ability that allowed him to command all bloodlines as if they were his servants, even those of the so-called purest and most powerful bloodlines. Due to his terrifying abilities, few dared to challenge him, allowing him to remain at the peak of the world since the beginning of time. You never questioned it or tried to find an answer? Yuan asked, his curiosity piqued. The Primal Monarch remained silent for a moment before shaking his head. I was curious during my earliest years, he admitted, but once I realized that knowledge wouldn't change anything, I have since stopped caring about it. Just what is so special about this human for the Primal Monarch to be so attached to him? The Primordial Phoenix wondered inwardly. The Primal Monarch was a godlike existence, one so far beyond the reach of most that even speaking to him seemed unimaginable. Yet, somehow, a mere human had managed to pique his interest enough to not only be adopted as his own but also be granted his immense powers. It was simply incomprehensible even for someone as experienced and knowledgeable as the Primordial Phoenix. Sometime later, after their conversation ended, the Primordial Phoenix opened a rift, leading Yuan to the Eternal Phoenix Domain's primary residence, where most of the phoenixes dwelled. There will be someone to assist you with your chaotic heart. The Primordial Phoenix said to him after opening the rift. You're not coming? I am going to examine her curse a little more. I understand. The moment Yuan emerged from the rift, he was immediately greeted by a familiar face, the young lady who was the first to approach him. And before them, multiple islands floated majestically in the sky, each one occupied by a powerful phoenix, their fiery auras radiating through the air. We meet again. I was given instructions by my mother to assist you. Your mother. You're also the Primordial Phoenix's daughter? Yuan asked. She nodded, I am the youngest. You can call me Fo Miao. Nice to meet you. By the way, how many siblings do you have? I have 5 siblings, but only 3 of them still exist in the Primal Expanse. The last 2 drifted into the other world, one of them being the eldest, whom you brought back. So there are 6 of you in total, huh? Are you all Primordial Phoenixes? Of course not. The Primordial Phoenix bloodline is the purest and highest grade Phoenix bloodline. Besides the eldest, we all have a different bloodline. However, while our bloodline isn't as pure as the eldest, we're still at the top of our bloodline. So Fong Fong is a Primordial Phoenix like her mother? But her character status shows a different bloodline. Is this also due to the curse? Yuan recalled that Xiao Hua's character status changed when she released her seal, so Feng Yuxiang might be in a similar situation. Anyways, enough about me. What's your relationship with eldest sister? Feng Yao stared at him with glowing eyes that were filled with curiosity. We're traveling companions, Yuan said with a smile, purposefully avoiding the fact that they were in a master-servant relationship. They'd probably skin me alive if they find out about our real relationship. Yuan could imagine the primordial phoenix's fury if she found out, sending shivers throughout his body. How long have you known the eldest? Feng Yao continued asking as they walked to their destination. We've only known each other for a few years. Huh? That little time? You're practically strangers. Yuan looked at her with raised eyebrows, but he refrained from commenting on her logic. What was she like when she still lived in the primal expanse? Yuan suddenly asked. Feng Yao shrugged and said, I was born long after she was gone, so I don't have the slightest clue. However, the others might know. You can try asking them later. I'll just ask the primordial phoenix later, he said. You're really something, you know? Feng Yao suddenly sighed. What do you mean? Despite being her daughter, I rarely see my mother, let alone speak with her, Feng Yao remarked with a hint of bitterness. I think you've spent more time with her than I have in my entire life so far. Seriously? Even though you all live in the same territory? What do you know? Mother spends most of her time inside her own world. Doing what? Increase her cultivation, which could already rival even the strongest cultivators in my world. No, she spends most of her time conceiving another child. It takes hundreds of millions of years for someone at her level to conceive a single child, after all. This doesn't include the time it takes her to absorb enough chaotic essence to begin the process, either. Yuan was left speechless by this revelation. Hundreds of millions of years for a single child? I suppose it would disrupt the balance of the world if such a powerful being could conceive too quickly, Yuan thought to himself. The stronger the being, the more time is required to conceive, a principle that applies even to humans. Compared to the primordial phoenix, Yingying's 1,000 years is almost laughably short. Alright, we're here. Feng Yao said out loud once they reached their destination. Chapter 1644 9 Levels of Hell. Chapter 1644 9 Levels of Hell, where exactly are we? Yuan inquired as they stood at the peak of a massive volcano. He thought they were going to feed him treasures to complete his chaotic heart. We're at the 9 Levels of Hell peak. What a terrifying name. Why did you bring me here? The primordial phoenix said you'd help me complete my chaotic heart. Were you expecting us to feed you treasures or something? You'll be forming your chaotic heart here. Feng Yao pointed at the raging flames inside the volcano. How does that work? Yuan asked with raised eyebrows. There are 9 floors in the 9 levels of hell, each floor engulfed in my mother, the primordial phoenix's flames, Feng Yao explained. If you temper your body within these flames, you'll eventually complete your chaotic heart. The deeper you go, the more intense the flames become, but the rewards will also be greater. Of course, they could have simply fed you on the necessary treasures to complete his chaotic heart. However, since the primordial phoenix couldn't kill him, she saw this as an opportunity to inflict some pain on him instead. Thus, this grueling method of tempering his body in the flames was chosen as a way to achieve his goal while ensuring he endured some suffering in the process. Not petty enough to hold a grudge, huh? Yuan recalled the primordial phoenix's words and shook his head inwardly. Anyway, you're only a human, and your cultivation is also pathetically low, so even the first level might be unbearable for you. Feng Yao continued, that's why I'll give you this. She handed him a bottle that contained a single drop of blood inside. Phoenix blood? Yuan raised an eyebrow. My blood, to be precise. If you consume it, you'll have enhanced fire resistance for a short time, enough to endure the second level at most. It was only ordinary phoenix blood, but Feng Yao had a powerful bloodline, so even a single drop would be priceless in the 9 heavens. Your blood is only enough for the second level? Just how powerful are these flames? Yuan asked. What do you know? My mother is the most powerful phoenix in existence. Her flames can burn even someone with fire immunity. Is that so? Have you heard of Phoenix's wrath? Yuan suddenly asked. Phoenix's wrath? Of course, I have. Why? How does it compare to the flames here? Feng Yao pondered for a moment before responding. The Phoenix's wrath would only be as strong as the flames in the 4th level. The 4th level only? This place is no joke. Yuan swallowed nervously. If the pain he experienced from the Phoenix's wrath was only as strong as the 4th level, he couldn't imagine how much pain had experienced in the 9th level. Alright, I'm going in, Yuan said a moment later. Don't bite more than you can chew. Feng Yao said. Yuan didn't say anything and jumped inside the entrance, diving straight toward the 2nd floor. Wah! I just warned him. And he didn't even consume my blood. Are all humans this reckless? Feng Yao was shocked when Yuan jumped straight to the 2nd level. As Yuan passed through the 1st level, a wave of intense heat washed over him, making him feel as though he had stepped into an oven. The air was thick with scorching energy, but to his surprise, it wasn't painful, just overwhelmingly hot, like standing too close to a blazing fire. The moment Yuan stepped into the 2nd level, the intensity of the heat skyrocketed. It was fierce enough to scorch his skin in an instant, but despite the flame's strength, they couldn't burn him faster than his body could regenerate. His healing abilities kicked in immediately, restoring his skin as quickly as it was damaged, creating a relentless cycle of burning and regeneration. This is a great place to temper my body and increase my fire resistance. Yuan thought, his excitement growing as the flames continued their relentless assault. Perhaps I could even achieve fire immunity in this place. The burning sensation was excruciating, but it wasn't unbearable. Filled with determination, he sat down and began cultivating on the 2nd level. Wow, he's actually enduring the 2nd level right off the bat. I guess I underestimated him a little. Feng Yao mused, her interest piqued. Not only did the flames temper Yuan's body, but they also contained rich chaotic essence that gradually advanced his chaotic heart. However, the process was slower than he anticipated. It'll take years to finish my chaotic heart at this rate. I'll head to the 3rd level once I improve my fire resistance to the next level. With that in mind, Yuan continued to temper in the flames. Sometime later, a figure appeared at the 9 levels of Hell Peak and landed right beside Feng Yao. Elder Brother Mu. Feng Yao greeted this tall and handsome man with a respectful smile. When did you return? A few hours ago, he responded, his gaze staring intently at Yuan's figure. Feng Mu was the 2nd youngest in the family, but he was still a billion years older than Feng Yao. I came back immediately after hearing that the eldest has returned. Is that him? The human who brought back the eldest from the human world? Feng Mu asked. Yes, he's the one. He's less impressive than I anticipated, even disappointing, Feng Mu remarked, shaking his head in dissatisfaction. I heard he was related to the Primal Monarch, too. Must be a lie. No, it's true. The Primal Monarch even showed up to protect him when Mother was about to kill him. Feng Yao said. Seriously? How is someone so weak related to the Primal Monarch? I can burn him to ashes with a single breath. Feng Mu quickly lost interest in Yuan and asked about Feng Yuxiang. Have you spoken to the eldest yet? What was she like? That's. Haven't you heard? She came back as a shell. What? Feng Mu immediately became dumbfounded. Chapter 1645 Fire Immunity. Chapter 1645 Fire Immunity. What the hell are you talking about? The eldest came back in such a state. Feng Mu almost couldn't believe what he was hearing. Unfortunately. I don't know the situation, but Mother's going to take care of it. In the meantime, I am tasked with helping him complete his chaotic heart. Feng Yao pointed at Yuan. Feng Mu shifted his gaze to Yuan again and sneered, what a waste of time and effort. Is that really the case? Huh. Don't tell me you think differently. I don't know humans enough to tell if he's talented or not, but he was chosen by the Primal Monarch. I think that says enough. Feng Yao shrugged. At this moment, Yuan suddenly opened his eyes and stood up. After Yuan's fire resistance reached a new threshold, he wasted no time and immediately descended to the third level. The flames on the third level were no longer the familiar orange hue of the first two levels. Instead, the third level was bathed in intense blue flames, radiating an even more potent and refined heat. Even with his supreme fire resistance and powerful body, he experienced pain that was several times worse than the second level. At this point, Yuan's entire figure was completely engulfed by flames, so much so that even his silhouette was no longer visible. The blue flames enveloped him entirely, making it seem as though he had become one with the fire itself. Despite the overwhelming intensity, Yuan remained focused, letting the flames temper his body further and push his limits. Wow, he's actually cultivating in the third level, Feng Yao muttered, covering her mouth in surprise, her eyes wide with awe. She had only expected him to reach the second level at most, but in just a few days, he had surpassed her expectations. Feng Yao turned to look at Yingzi, who had been silently blending in with the background, and spoke to her. How long have you been following this human? Since the moment he arrived at the primal expanse, I guess. Why are you following him? I thought shadow dwellers are introverts. I wanted to know what it means to be human. Oh. That does sound interesting. What have you learned so far? A new voice suddenly interrupted. Yingzi turned toward the voice and saw a beautiful woman with short red hair and purple eyes hovering gracefully above the 9 levels of Hell Peak. Her presence was commanding, and the air around her seemed to shimmer with an ethereal glow as she watched the scene below with calm intensity. Elder Sister Liqiu. Both Feng Yao and Feng Mu bowed to her in a respectful manner the moment they noticed her presence. This newcomer was Feng Liqiu, the second eldest in their family. After snapping out of her daze, Yingzi responded, not much, but from what I've seen, humans are beings that grow exponentially fast. From my understanding, human growth varies from person to person. Feng Liqi said. Although I don't know how he compares with the rest of the humans in his world, he's definitely a lot better than the humans I've encountered in the primal expanse. Being the second oldest in the family, Feng Liqi has lived for billions of years in the primal expanse, so she has encountered plenty of humans in the past. Have you spoken with Mother yet, Elder Sister Liqi? Feng Mu asked. Yes, but it was brief. Elder Sister Liqi, you've met the eldest before, correct? What was she like? Feng Yao suddenly asked after recalling Yuan asking her the same question. Elder Sister, huh? Feng Liqi closed her eyes and recalled her memories of Feng Yuxiang, which were billions of years old. We never really got along and constantly competed against each other to impress Mother. As for what she was like, I don't remember. Anyway, she's probably reincarnated many times by now. I doubt she's the same person I remember. Feng Liqi's gaze returned to looking at Yuan. I'm more interested in this human with the Primal Monarch's bloodline. She muttered with a slight smile. What's so interesting about that weakling? Feng Mu shook his head, unable to comprehend it. Are you pretending to be stupid, or are you actually stupid? Feng Liqiu narrowed her gaze at him. What did you say? Did you just call me stupid? Feng Mu exclaimed, clearly surprised by her sudden mockery. Amongst the thousands of phoenixes in our territory, how many of them are capable of cultivating in the third level? Most of them can't even endure the second level. Yet, this human is able to achieve that with his pitiful cultivation. That's. Feng Mu became speechless. A human capable of withstanding Mother's flames. I am very intrigued. A profound smile appeared on Feng Liqi's face as she returned to focusing on Yuan. Humph, whatever. Feng Mu didn't linger and left the scene shortly after. However, he didn't leave the Eternal Phoenix domain. Are you going to stay here? Elder Sister? Feng Yao asked Feng Liqiu. I don't have anything else to do, so I might as well. I also want to see his limit. Huh? You think he'll be able to go higher than the third level? That's impossible. He's already at his limit on the third level. Feng Yao refused to believe that he could go any further. Is that what you think? I think he still has some tricks tucked under his sleeves. I mean, I did give him a drop of my blood, which he hasn't consumed yet. However, that won't help him in the next level. Oh? You gave him your blood? Did Mother tell you to do that? Feng Liqiu looked at her with a suspicious smile. No, but don't misunderstand. This is my way of showing gratitude. He brought back the eldest, after all. 2 weeks later, a significant change occurred in the flames surrounding Yuan's body. The once ferocious flames, which had relentlessly burned him, began to shift, their intensity softening as they seemed to merge with his aura. The fire no longer consumed him but appeared to dance in harmony with his energy, as though he had mastered its power and become one with the flames. Chapter 1646 Completed Chaotic Heart. Chapter 1646 Completed Chaotic Heart, that human. He's achieved fire immunity. Feng Yao exclaimed, her expression filled with astonishment. I didn't know humans could do that. She had always believed that only beasts with unique bloodlines, like phoenixes, were capable of acquiring such immunity. The fact that a human had done it defied her expectations and understanding. Even in the 9 heavens, achieving fire immunity was an exceptionally rare accomplishment. Those who managed it typically relied on special techniques, priceless treasures, and years of dedicated cultivation to reach that level. There were also those born with unique physiques that granted them fire immunity naturally, but that was a different story since they hadn't earned it through effort but were simply born with the gift. The fact that Yuan had attained this without the aid of a technique made his accomplishment all the more extraordinary. However, no, this isn't something as simple as fire immunity. Feng Liqiu's eyes widened as she came to this realization. Fire immunity, rank, divine, mastery, level 1, description, grants the user immunity to most fire. What? It's fusing with my fire immunity? Yuan raised an eyebrow at this notification. Is this similar to how my 2 physiques fused with each other? Unlike fusing 2 physiques together, the progress this time was much quicker. He's absorbing the flames. Feng Yao exclaimed when she noticed this. Fire immunity only makes one impervious to most fire, but it doesn't have the ability to absorb flames. Feng Liqiu narrowed her eyes and spoke, her voice calm but filled with passion. Fire immunity may be the end of the journey for most, but for us phoenixes, that is just the beginning. Above fire immunity lies true fire immunity, where one becomes truly immune to all flames, Feng Liqiu continued, and beyond that is the realm of fire harmony. Once one reaches fire harmony, not only will they be immune to fire, but they'll also be able to absorb it, transforming flames into their own power, the apex of fire control. Are you telling me that a human has managed to achieve fire harmony when even I haven't been able to do so? Feng Yao exclaimed, her voice filled with disbelief and frustration. The idea that a mere human could reach a level of mastery that had eluded her was almost inconceivable. Feng Liqiu shook her head and said, no, that can't be possible. He's just achieved fire immunity, so it doesn't make sense for him to achieve fire harmony so quickly. There must be something else going on inside that weird body of his. Suddenly, Yuan stood up and jumped even deeper into the 9 levels of hell, reaching the 4th level. The 4th level's flames were as powerful as the Phoenix's wrath, a force Yuan couldn't withstand for more than a few seconds before. However, after achieving fire immunity, the once unbearable flames became barely endurable. The progress of his physique, which had stalled at 50% before Yuan entered the 4th level, began to rise once more. As for his chaotic heart, it was already on the verge of completion. This is something different. It's similar to fire harmony, but it's not the same. Feng Liqiu mused to herself as she spent more time watching Yuan. Several hours later, Yuan completed his chaotic heart. Ding! Yuan, Cultivation, Dantian 1st level Spirit Sovereign, Cultivation, Chaotic Heart not applicable. Yuan wasn't surprised to see a second cultivation because Tian also achieved the same thing after returning to the divine heavens and cultivating his Dantian. Yuan's second cultivation soared rapidly, experiencing breakthroughs every few minutes. In just a few short hours, Yuan's second cultivation reached early chaotic master, akin to a 9th level spirit enlightenment in human cultivation, surpassing his original cultivation. What am I seeing right now? I can sense 2 distinct energies coming from him. Is this what happens when a human forms a chaotic heart? I have never seen or heard of anything like this before. Feng Yao exclaimed. Feng Liqiu narrowed her eyes at Yuan and said, "This isn't my first time seeing a human with a fully formed chaotic heart. Do you recall the human who made a mess in our territory several million years ago? However, he didn't have the other energy at that time, so this is also my first time seeing someone with both at once. I wonder how it affects him. I have heard about him, but that happened before I was born." Feng Yao nodded. Now that he's formed his chaotic heart, he should be leaving soon. However, Feng Yao would soon realize that Yuan had no intention of leaving so soon. He may have formed his chaotic heart, but he still had something else to complete. Chaotic essence is essentially the same as spiritual energy, but it's more chaotic, giving it far greater destructive power, Yuan thought, recalling Tian's experience. Unfortunately, it can't be used with human techniques. However, I can fuse it with my spiritual energy to enhance my techniques and make them more powerful. Or, I can directly enhance my body with it. When the fusing progress halted at 70%, Yuan looked to the 5th level. After a moment of stillness, his body suddenly surged with chaotic essence. Once had strengthened his entire body with chaotic essence, Yuan jumped straight to the 5th level, where the flames were bright green and 5 times more powerful than the 4th level. Chapter 1647 5th Level of Hell. Chapter 1647 5th Level of Hell. The instant Yuan entered the 5th level of 9 levels of Hell, his progress shot up from 70% to 80%. However, the pain he was experiencing was excruciating and would break the minds of even the toughest cultivators out there. The 9 levels of Hell weren't created for humans but for phoenixes, beasts with a natural affinity for fire. Even a newly born phoenix with the lowest bloodline would have supreme fire resistance, and it wouldn't take long for them to achieve fire immunity. In fact, even a golden immortal would perish inside the 5th level, much less a spirit sovereign like Yuan. How much more is this human going to surprise me? Even I, who has almost achieved true fire immunity, can barely endure the 5th level's flames. Feng Yao exclaimed. Feng Liqiu didn't make any comments and merely watched him in silence. Yuan remained in the 5th level for a week straight, and his progress reached 89%. Once he realized he wouldn't advance any further, Yuan looked at the 6th level, where purple-colored flames raged. After a moment of silence, he released a resolute roar before transforming into his dragon form. That's... Feng Yao and Feng Liqiu were startled by Yuan's transformation. While they took a moment to comprehend the situation, Yuan dove into the 6th level. This scent, does he have dragon blood flowing through his veins? Feng Yao cried out loud. Does mother know about this? Feng Liqiu looked at her with a slight frown. Dragons were forbidden from entering the eternal phoenix domain. It didn't matter if they were real dragons or only had a single drop of dragon blood in their whole body. Rules were rules, and not a single dragon managed to remain in their territory for more than a day, much less cultivate inside the 9 levels of Hell Peak, a sacred place for phoenixes. I don't know. Feng Yao vigorously shook her head. I was only told to bring him to this place. Once the nearby phoenixes noticed Yuan's scent, they immediately rushed over to the 9 levels of Hell Peak, thinking that a dragon had invaded their sanctuary. A dragon? In the center of the eternal phoenix domain? Impossible. How did a dragon manage to invade so deeply inside our territory without revealing its presence until now? This dragon has a weak presence, but it still doesn't explain how it evaded us until now. The scent is coming from the 9 levels of Hell Peak. Don't tell me they're trying to sabotage our sacred place. Hundreds of phoenixes gathered at the 9 levels of Hell Peak within minutes, surrounding the place. Not a single one of them wasn't baffled at the moment of their arrival when they saw the situation. What the fuck is going on? What the fuck am I looking at? Are my eyes deceiving me, or is there a dragon inside the 9 levels of hell? At the 6th level, no less. None of the newcomers dared to believe their eyes. Sometime later, they snapped out of their daze and began shouting at each other. Hey! Someone go fish that dragon bastard out. Why don't you do it? Although nobody there wanted to admit it, none of them could enter the 6th level, much less drag Yuan out. Lady Liqiu. You're the only one here who can endure the flames on the 6th level. Eventually, they all turned to the only individual there who had any hopes of surviving the 6th level. Feng Liqiu remained silent for a moment before responding to their hopeful gazes. Huh? Why should I? Her words instantly shattered their hopes and left them dumbfounded. What do you mean, why? There's a dragon in our territory, inside the 9 levels of hell. She shrugged. I'm exhausted right now. Exhausted? From what? From rushing back home, she explained. An awkward silence filled the atmosphere. Suddenly, a loud and authoritative voice resounded. What the hell is going on here? Master Mu. These phoenixes became hopeful again after seeing Feng Mu's appearance. These phoenixes pointed to the 6th level of the 9 levels of hell without uttering a word. When Feng Mu followed their gesture and saw Yuan cultivating in the 6th level, his eyes widened with shock and disbelief. The 6th level? Impossible. He immediately looked at Feng Liqiu and questioned her. What did you do to him? He assumed Feng Liqiu was responsible for Yuan's achievement since she was the only one there capable of entering the 6th level. And why the hell does he smell like a dragon? Is mother aware of this? No clue what you're talking about. Feng Liqiu casually responded. Feng Mu looked at Yuan and frowned. Whatever. If you're not going to take him out, I will do it myself. I won't allow him to dirty this place with his presence any longer. Halt. Right as Feng Mu prepared to dive into the volcano, a calm and clear voice rippled through the air, halting everyone's movement. The second the phoenixes recognized this voice, they lowered their heads and loudly greeted her. Empress Feng. We greet Her Majesty. The primordial phoenix emerged from a rift, her figure hovering majestically above the 9 levels of hell. Her gaze was fixed intently on Yuan, observing him with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. Nobody is allowed to disturb him. Leave. The phoenixes bowed to her and left the scene without uttering a single word. The only ones who remained were her children. Once most of the spectators were gone, the primordial phoenix created a barrier around the peak that prevented Yuan's scent from spreading. Mother, did you let him enter knowing that he has dragon blood flowing through his veins? Feng Mu asked. Yes, I am aware. Once the primordial phoenix confirmed this fact, Feng Mu no longer had any say in this matter. He gave Yuan one final glance before disappearing from the scene. I know you're watching this, Primal Monarch. The primordial phoenix suddenly spoke out loud. Sure enough, another rift appeared above the volcano, and the Primal Monarch emerged from it. I don't remember the last time I made so many public appearances in such a short time. In fact, this might be a first, he spoke as he appeared. Chapter 1648 Impervious to Fire. Chapter 1648 Impervious to Fire, Primal Monarch. Feng Yao and Feng Liqiu lowered their head after snapping out of their daze. The Primal Monarch acknowledged them with a slight nod before looking at the Primordial Phoenix and asking, So, why did you call for me? The Primordial Phoenix looked at Yuan and spoke, You know, I have secretly been to the human world before, and I'd even spent a few thousand years there. What? When did you do such a thing? And why? Feng Liqiu expressed shock after learning this information for the first time despite being the second eldest. After giving birth to my 4th child, I suddenly had the urge to see how my first child was doing, so I traveled to the human world to satisfy my curiosity. Just going there took several million years of traveling non-stop. I was only able to achieve this because she had the same bloodline as me, and I could sense someone of the same bloodline no matter the distance. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't have been able to find the human world, much less see my child. After arriving at the human world and confirming with my eyes that my first child was there, I spent several thousand years exploring the world. During my time there, I studied the humans, learning their customs and whatnot. Unfortunately, what stood out the most about humans was their insignificant strength. Even the strongest cultivators back then were laughably weak. The primordial phoenix recalled her experience in the divine heavens long before it was split. No matter how much potential they had, it didn't impress me even in the slightest. That's why I left their world so quickly. It was simply too boring, and I have already reunited with my first child, without her knowledge. However, this human cultivating inside my flames right now, he's different, and I want to know if you had anything to do with it, Primal Monarch. The Primal Monarch smiled and said, in essence, you want to know if I have anything to do with his abilities, correct? The Primordial Phoenix nodded. The Primal Monarch looked at Yuan and smiled. He may have my bloodline, but what he's displaying right now has nothing to do with it. It's something entirely different. I see. Why do you even care? The Primal Monarch asked. Just curious, she responded in a nonchalant manner. A few days later, Yuan's aura suddenly began to transform. The Primordial Phoenix and the others watched with anticipation. Yuan stared at the progress for several hours straight, hoping it would be completed without needing him to enter the 7th level. Realizing he needed stronger flames to complete his progress, Yuan turned his gaze toward the 7th level, where black flames roared ominously. These flames exuded a dangerous and oppressive energy, far more intense than anything he had encountered before. I will only be able to last a few seconds in the 7th level. Even with his godlike physique, fire immunity, and incredible regeneration, Yuan knew he would perish in the 7th level if he stayed longer than a few seconds. The sheer power of the black flames was beyond anything he had faced before, and even this estimate felt like a dangerous gamble. But despite the risk, Yuan was determined to finish the progress. He's looking toward the 7th level. Don't tell me he plans on going deeper? Does he have a death wish? Feng Yao swallowed nervously. Feng Liqiu narrowed her eyes, recalling her first time entering the 7th level. When she first attempted the 7th level, she had just achieved fire harmony, but even that was not enough to withstand the black flames, and she nearly lost her life just entering it. If Mother didn't save me at the last second, I would have perished on that day. Feng Liqiu sighed inwardly. After preparing himself, Yuan took one last deep breath before jumping into the black flames. The flames are much more powerful than I anticipated. I won't last more than a second in this place. Yuan immediately realized that had underestimated the prowess of the black flames, but it was already too late to go back. More than half of his body was burned away the instant he entered the 7th level. However, at the same time, his progress also advanced. The moment Yuan's physique evolved, the black flames ceased their relentless assault on his body. Instead of burning him, the flames began to restore his body, even strengthening it. Once his body was fully restored, the flames began filling his chaotic heart with chaotic essence, causing his cultivation to soar once again. His cultivation halted at perfect chaotic master, rivaling someone at the peak of divine master. Yuan inspected his body, marveling at the transformation. The black flames, which had once pushed him to the brink of collapse with unbearable pain, now felt soothing and comforting, as if he were basking in the perfect sunlight. Am I completely impervious to fire now? Yuan wondered inwardly. He turned his gaze toward the 8th level, where beautiful white flames raged with an ethereal intensity. Strangely, despite their brilliance and power, he couldn't sense any threat from them. It was as though the flames no longer held the capacity to harm him. What just happened? His body was on the verge of destruction just seconds ago. Now it seems as if the flames don't even affect him. Feng Liqiu exclaimed, her voice filled with shock and disbelief. Not only is he unaffected by it, he's absorbing the flames and turning them into his own strength. The primordial phoenix muttered, her eyes narrowing as she observed Yuan with a thoughtful expression. Chapter 1649 Harmonious Heaven Refining Immortal Physique. Chapter 1649 Harmonious Heaven Refining Immortal Physique, turning the flames into his own strength. That is a realm above fire harmony. Feng Liqiu muttered in a dazed voice. While the phoenixes remained stunned by Yuan's remarkable achievements, he decided to push the boundaries of his newfound power. Without hesitation, he leaped straight into the 8th level, where the brilliant white flames roared fiercely. Sure enough, I don't feel any difference. No, this is even more comfortable than the black flames. Yuan thought, closing his eyes as the white flames enveloped him. This is outrageous. Feng Liqiu muttered, her body trembling as she stared at Yuan's figure. The white flames, powerful enough to seriously injure even her, despite having pushed her fire harmony to its limits, seemed to have no effect on him. Just days ago, he had struggled on the 2nd level, yet now, this mere human was enduring the flames of the 8th level with ease. The sight left her speechless and shaken. I don't get it. The primordial phoenix suddenly muttered out loud. Even if he has the ability to absorb my flames, there should be a limit to how much he could absorb without blowing up. His cultivation isn't increasing, and I refuse to believe that his single chaotic heart could contain so much chaotic essence. Where are all of the chaotic essence going? The primordial phoenix's question was a valid one. Just like a cup, no vessel, no matter how powerful, could hold an infinite amount. If one kept pouring water into a cup, it would eventually overflow. Similarly, there had to be a limit to how much power Yuan could absorb before reaching a breaking point. Yet, this breaking point was nowhere to be seen with Yuan. Sure enough, Yuan's chaotic heart could not contain an infinite amount of chaotic essence, and once it was completely filled to the brim, the chaotic essence was sent elsewhere. Primordial fire, rank, celestial, mastery level, 1, description, the highest level of fire mastery, attainable only by a few bloodlines. Primordial fire transcends all other flames, bypassing even the strongest fire resistance and immunity. It is the ultimate expression of fire, a flame unrivaled in destructive capability and feared by even phoenixes. So I can turn the flames I absorbed into my own power. Yuan swallowed nervously at the implications. If I can merge my physique with the fire immunity, I should be able to do the same with other immunities. Perhaps that's how I complete my new physique. Sometime later, Yuan turned his gaze to the 9th and final level of the 9 levels of hell. Unlike the previous 8 levels, there were no visible flames in the 9th. However, despite the absence of fire, Yuan could clearly sense something powerful and ominous lingering within. It looks like I am not completely impervious to all fire yet. Yuan sighed inwardly. Though he had endured the 8th level without any issues, he could instinctively sense that the 9th level was different, deadly, even for him. I guess it's about time I leave this place. In just a few days, had completed his chaotic heart, gained fire immunity, evolved his physique, and even acquired a celestial rank skill. Feeling satisfied by the results, Yuan left the 9 levels of hell. The moment Yuan emerged from the volcano, he instinctively sensed something hurtling toward him. Turning around, his eyes widened as he spotted a massive ball of black flames flying directly at him. Yuan instinctively raised his arm, opening his palm to block the incoming flames with his bare hand. The moment the massive ball of flames made contact with his palm, it was absorbed instantly. The flames, which were strong enough to kill even immortals, vanished into his hand, leaving Yuan unscathed. What was that about? Yuan looked at the primordial phoenix, who was responsible for the surprise attack. I wanted to confirm your abilities. What if that had killed me? But it didn't. Unbelievable. Why are you complaining? You should be thanking me for letting you use the 9 levels of hell. I would have if you didn't send me here because of your pettiness. Yuan shrugged. I have no clue what you're talking about. The primordial phoenix shook her head. Whatever. I'm going to head to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary now that I have completed my chaotic heart. Wait a minute. Feng Liqiu suddenly spoke up. Who are you? Yuan asked. I'm Feng Liqiu, the second eldest in the family. Oh, hello. Do you need something from me? Can you tell me how you are absorbing the flames? It's mostly thanks to my unique physique, that's all. Were you born with that physique? Yes. Feng Liqiu suddenly became silent with a ponderous expression on her face. If there's nothing else, wait, I have one more thing, a request. What kind? Feng Liqiu narrowed her eyes and spoke. Give me some of your blood and chaotic essence. What? Yuan raised an eyebrow, unable to comprehend her request at first. However, Feng Yao and the Primordial Phoenix reacted with shock, their eyes wide in disbelief. The request clearly struck them, while the Primal Monarch, observing the scene, wore a slight smile, as if amused. Wait a second. Yuan suddenly had a sense of déjà vu. Then, he recalled a certain conversation he had with Lan Yingying. He swallowed nervously before asking, that request, you want to conceive with my energy? She nodded without hesitation. What the hell are you thinking? The Primordial Phoenix suddenly interjected. I have been wanting a child for a while now, and I think this is the perfect time. But with a human. I have never heard of anything like that before. Is that even possible? I guess we'll find out soon enough. Feng Liqiu smiled. Ahem. Yuan cleared his throat and said, it's definitely possible for beasts to conceive with humans since it's been done before in my world, but I have no intention of doing something like that with someone I don't know. But I already told you who I am. Feng Liqiu said. You know what I mean. Yuan shook his head. Chapter 1650 Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Chapter 1650 Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Honestly, I don't really understand. Feng Liqiu shook her head, and she continued, most would be delighted, even honored, if I requested for their chaotic essence to conceive my child. Excluding dragons, I cannot imagine anyone refusing. Feng Liqiu's status as the daughter of the Primordial Phoenix alone granted her immense prestige in the primal expanse. Her lineage was revered, making her among the most respected in the realm, with many viewing her as nearly untouchable. Moreover, she was a powerhouse in her own right, standing as one of the strongest predators in the primal expanse. In the entire Eternal Phoenix domain, her strength was second only to her mother, the Primordial Phoenix. Countless powerful beings had willingly offered their chaotic essence to Feng Liqiu over the years without her even needing to ask them, but not a single one of them managed to receive her approval. Just as human men court women out of love, in the primal expanse, beings offer their chaotic essence to those they admire to express their desire for a deeper bond and in hopes of conceiving a child with them. If I'm going to conceive a child with someone, I'd at least want to get to know them first, Yuan said. Is that a human thing? Feng Liqiu asked. I guess. Hearing this, she no longer continued the topic, but she didn't appear to have given up yet. Can you bring me to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary? Yuan looked at the Primal Monarch. Do you have a plan to acquire the treasure from them yet? The Primordial Phoenix suddenly asked. He shook his head, no, I don't. I'll figure it out as things progress. The Primal Monarch didn't ask any questions and created a rift that directly led to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary for him. The rift will bring you to a place 2 days away from the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Okay. Yuan looked at Yingzi and asked, want to come along? She immediately nodded. With the Primordial Phoenix and the Primal Monarch's presence there, the atmosphere was a little too suffocating for someone like her. Then I'll see you again once I acquire the treasure. Yuan entered the rift the next moment, followed by Yingzi. The Primal Monarch left shortly after Yuan left, disappearing into thin air. Sister, were you serious just now? Feng Yao looked at Feng Liqiu and asked. Of course. But why? I am curious, she said with a smile. What kind of child would be born from a phoenix and a human like him? I want to find out. What do you think, mother? Feng Liqiu looked at the Primordial Phoenix to get her opinion on the matter. I think that's a ridiculous reason to conceive your first child with a human. The Primordial Phoenix shook her head, but she didn't reject the idea for some reason. Feng Liqiu noticed this and chuckled, so you're also curious, huh? Now I wonder what would happen if a Primordial Phoenix like mother conceived with a human. Hearing this, the Primordial Phoenix smacked Feng Liqiu in the back of the head and sneered, don't get ahead of yourself. After emerging from the rift, Yingzi guided Yuan toward the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Even before they began their journey, Yuan's eyes were drawn to a towering, pillar-like structure in the distance. The massive tower seemed to stretch endlessly into the heavens, dominating the horizon with its grandeur and presence. That must be the Dragon Ascending Mountain. I wanted to visit this place before, but it was too far away. Yuan recalled his experience as Tian. Starting from the Eternal Phoenix domain, the Divine Dragon Sanctuary was located on the far opposite side of the Primal Expanse. Without special treasures, the journey would take an unfathomable amount of time. Even with such treasures, it would have taken Tian over 100 years to reach the Divine Dragon Sanctuary on his own, which was why he had chosen to ignore it in the past. Do you know anything about the Divine Dragon Sanctuary? Yuan asked Yingzi as they traveled. I have never been to this part of the Primal Expanse, but the Divine Dragon Sanctuary is one of the most famous territories in this world. Although it has dragon in its name and many dragons gather there, other races are also allowed to stay in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, Yingzi continued. It's quite populated and diverse, unlike the Eternal Phoenix domain, which is more exclusive. Is that so? Over the next 2 days, Yuan pondered how he should go about acquiring the sacred chalice of purification. Unfortunately, with so little information on the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, formulating any reliable plans was pretty much impossible. In the end, Yuan decided to join the Divine Dragon Sanctuary to learn more about them first before planning anything. 2 days later, Yuan and Yingzi arrived at the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Unlike the Eternal Phoenix domain, where entry was closely guarded, no one approached or attempted to stop them from entering the territory. In fact, Yuan noticed a constant flow of other presences arriving at the territory at the same time, giving the place a more open and welcoming atmosphere. However, Yuan didn't know where to start. In order to become affiliated with a territory, one typically required the approval of the territory's master. However, the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, being one of the largest and most powerful territories in the Primal Expanse, operated differently. It was impractical for one of the strongest beings in the world to handle such insignificant matters, so a dedicated group of individuals was appointed specifically for this purpose. Yingzi, can you sense any dragons nearby? Yuan asked her. I sense a few, but none of them have the scent of a true dragon. They probably belong to an inferior bloodline. Can you bring us to the one who seems to be the most reliable? How can I tell if they're reliable? Forget it. Just bring us to the closest one. Okay. Sometime later, Yuan and Yingzi approached a tall man with striking blue hair. The moment he sensed Yuan's scent and powerful aura, the man's eyes widened in surprise and awe. Who are you? Chapter 1651 Dragon God Festival. Chapter 1651 Dragon God Festival. I am Yuan, and I traveled half the world just to come to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Yuan introduced himself. The blue-haired man swallowed nervously. He could tell just from Yuan's scent alone that he was in the presence of a true dragon with a powerful bloodline. I cannot imagine the effort and time it took you to come here, but I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Divine Dragon Council. The man said. It wasn't too bad. Yuan smiled. Anyway, I came here because, before Yuan could finish his sentence, the man interrupted, the Dragon God Festival, correct? The what? Yuan raised an eyebrow after hearing this unfamiliar name. The Dragon God Festival, he repeated before asking, you didn't come here for the festival? Pretty much every single visitor these days are here for the festival. Sorry, but I came here to visit the Divine Dragon Sanctuary because of its widespread fame. Yuan shook his head. Please, there's no need for you to apologize. I should be the one apologizing for making such assumptions in the first place. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me. In that case, can you tell me more about this Dragon God Festival? The man nodded. The Dragon God Festival is a tradition in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary that happens only once every 25 million years. During the festival, the participants compete against each other for the title of Dragon God Successor. Naturally, since this is related to the dragon race, only dragons are allowed to participate. However, there's some leniency. Even those with inferior or incomplete dragon blood are permitted to join. Every 25 million years. Yuan wore a dumbfounded expression on his face after hearing this information. He then asked, "What kind of competitions occur during the festival?" "I'm sorry, but I don't know," the blue-haired man replied, shaking his head. "The trials are decided by the dragon god, and they change with every festival. We only learn the details of the trials when the festival is about to begin." "When does the festival begin?" "Exactly 2 years from now, so very soon." Yuan was speechless. Since the festival takes place every 25 million years, I guess 2 years is nothing in their eyes, he sighed inwardly. "Is there anything to be gained from this festival?" Yuan asked a moment later. "Of course. Not only will you become the dragon god's successor if you win the festival, but the dragon god will even grant you any one wish." The man replied, his voice filled with excitement. "Any wish?" Yuan repeated as he mused to himself. The man nodded, "That's right. The dragon god is one of the most powerful beings in the primal expanse. He can fulfill almost any wish. I must be fated to participate in this festival." Yuan sighed inwardly. If he won the festival, he could wish for the sacred chalice of purification. "Can I participate in the festival?" he asked a moment later. "Of course. As long as you are related to the dragon race, you can sign up for the festival. Are there any other requirements? For example, do I have to be affiliated with the Divine Dragon Sanctuary?" "No, the festival is open to everyone as long as they meet the requirements." "That's great. Where do I sign up?" The man pointed to the dragon ascending mountain and said, "Do you see that tower? You can sign up there." "Thank you very much." Yuan and Yingzi made their way to the tower shortly after. "Now that I've decided to participate in the festival, I have to wait 2 years for it to begin." Yuan pondered what he should do in the meantime while they approached the dragon ascending mountain. Sometime later, Yuan and Yingzi reached Dragon Ascending Mountain, but by the time they got there, tens of thousands of beings were already lined up. Once they joined the queue, Yuan took a moment to inspect the towering structure ahead. The Dragon Ascending Mountain was, in reality, just an incredibly tall pillar stretching into the sky. There was an entrance at the base of the tower, but Yuan couldn't quite imagine what lay inside or what purpose it served. He tried looking inside using his divine sense, but an invisible force prevented him from peeking inside. "Hey!" Amid his thoughts, Yuan suddenly felt someone tugging at his clothes. He turned to look at Yingzi, who was staring at him. "I want to eat the rest of my meat skewers," she said. "All right." Yuan pulled out a handful of meat skewers and handed them to Yingzi. The rich, savory scent of the skewers immediately filled the air, catching the attention of everyone in line and even those nearby. Heads turned, and whispers spread as the aroma quickly became the center of attention. "What is that smell?" My mouth became watery after a single whiff. "It's coming from the back of the queue. Look at those meat on sticks in that little girl's hands." "What kind of meat is that?" "I've never smelled anything so delicious before," someone exclaimed, their voice filled with astonishment. The crowd murmured in agreement, their eyes fixed on the food in Yingzi's grasp. "Hey! What the fuck are you trying to pull here?" An irritated voice suddenly roared, cutting through the chatter. Yuan shifted his gaze to the man standing directly in front of them in the queue. The man's expression was tense, clearly agitated by something, and his eyes flicked toward Yuan and Yingzi with clear frustration. "What do you mean?" Yuan calmly inquired. "You know what I mean. Why would you pull out something like that without considering your place and situation? Or are you trying to start something on purpose?" "It's just food," Yuan said with a seemingly innocent expression on his face. "Well, it's causing a commotion. Unless you share it with the rest of us, get it out of our faces." "What kind of logic is that?" "I don't see why we need to share it with you." Yuan shook his head and said, "You're the one causing a commotion here. Anyway, if it bothers you that much, feel free to take the meat skewers away from her. I won't stop you." Chapter 1652 Dragon Princess Meihui. Chapter 1652 Dragon Princess Meihui. The man glanced at Yingzi, only to be met with a fierce, piercing glare that sent chills through his entire body. Instinctively, He knew that if he dared to make a move for the meat skewers in her hands, it would lead to a swift and terrible demise. Her lack of presence, is she a shadow dweller? The onlookers pondered Yingzi's identity. After chewing and swallowing the meat in her mouth, Yingzi spoke out loud, "I'm willing to exchange my food." Really? The man was pleasantly surprised, and his opinions of shadow dwellers slightly improved. However, Yingzi continued, "In exchange for one skewer, I will have your life." Not just the man before her but even Yuan and the other onlookers reacted with bafflement. "Why you crazy little bitch? I'm gonna fucking kill you." The man roared with an enraged face, and his aura surged with bloodlust. However, right as the man raised his hand, another voice boomed. "What is going on here? Who dares to cause a commotion right before the Dragon God Festival? I'll disqualify you on the spot." Everyone there turned to look at the approaching figure. She was a tall beauty with a strict face and an authoritative air around her. Dragon Princess Meihui. The people there lowered their heads when they recognized her identity. Yuan looked at her with interest. In terms of prowess, she seems to be on par with Feng Liqiu. So, what is the problem here? Dragon Princess Meihui glared at Yuan and the man who exuded bloodlust with a deep frown on her face. However, if one looked closely, one would see her eyes glancing at the meat skewers in Yingzi's grasp every few seconds. Dragon Princess Meihui would never admit it, but she couldn't care less about their insignificant drama. What prompted her to show up in the first place was in Yingzi's grasp. "Dragon Princess, we were quietly waiting in line when this unreasonable fellow in front of us suddenly became aggressive." Yuan was the first to speak up, and he directly placed all blame on the man. Don't give me that bullshit. You were the ones who provoked us with your food." The man hastily refuted. Yuan shook his head and said, "How did we provoke you with our food? I don't recall dangling them in front of your nose and provoking you. Or were you so enticed by the scent that you became offended? Either way, my friend was minding her business when you started yapping about sharing our food without providing any logical reason, and then you got angry when she refused." Yuan turned to look at the Dragon Princess with an apologetic smile. "Although it wasn't our intention, it is true that our food was the main cause for the commotion. I hope you can forgive us." Before the Dragon Princess could even open her mouth to respond, Yuan retrieved a handful of meat skewers and shoved them toward her. "Please accept our apology." Silence filled the atmosphere while the onlookers were shocked by the implications behind Yuan's actions. That bastard has the audacity to bribe the Dragon Princess so openly? The Dragon Princess stared at the meat skewers with a somewhat dazed face. When she snapped out of it a moment later, she cleared her throat and spoke, "Is that so? Don't worry about it. Since eating here is not a crime, you are not responsible for what happened." She turned to look at the man with narrowed eyes and continued, "I will only give you a warning. If you continue to make a scene, I will disqualify you from the festival." "I understand. I will not disappoint the princess a second time." The man didn't dare to argue back and responded with his head lowered. "Then I will take my leave." Just as the Dragon Princess turned to leave, Yuan spoke again, his tone calm but firm. "You haven't accepted my apology yet, Princess." He was referring to the meat skewers that were still in his grasp. The Dragon Princess instantly halted her movements, but her eyebrows were twitching. "If you really don't want it, I'll take them back." As Yuan began pulling his arms back, she turned back to Yuan and swiftly accepted the meat skewers. "If you insist, I will accept it," she said in a somewhat bashful voice. After accepting the skewers, the Dragon Princess wasted no time and immediately took a bite. The moment the flavors hit her tongue, her eyes widened in surprise and delight, clearly caught off guard by how delicious the food was. "Oh my, this is so delicious. What kind of meat is this?" the Dragon Princess inquired after swallowing. "Chicken." "What is that?" The Dragon Princess raised an eyebrow in puzzlement as she moved on to the next skewer. "It's a kind of bird. Like phoenixes?" "No, but I guess they're pretty similar. I have eaten phoenixes before, but they don't taste anything like this." The Dragon Princess shook her head. Before she realized it, the dragon princess had finished all the meat skewers, and a wave of disappointment washed over her. She hadn't expected to enjoy them so much, and now that they were gone, she found herself wishing for more. Her expression softened slightly, though she tried to maintain her composure. She turned to look at Yingzi, who was slowly enjoying the skewers, and sighed inwardly, I should have slowly savored every bite, but alas. Then she shifted her gaze to Yuan's handsome face. After a moment of silence, she cleared her throat and said, Thank you for the food. It was amazing. Can I get your name? I am Yuan. Then, Yuan, I'll give you this as a thank you. She suddenly gestured toward the people working at the front of the line. Noticing her signal, one of them quickly rushed over, holding a small token in his hands. This token verifies that you are a participant in the Dragon God Festival. Dragon Princess Meihui grabbed the token and handed it to Yuan. With this, you won't need to wait in line anymore. Yuan gladly accepted the token. Thank you. Chapter 1653 Divine Dragon Council. Chapter 1653 Divine Dragon Council, then I'll be on my way now. After Yuan had been given the token, Dragon Princess Meihui quickly left the scene. There were two major reasons why Dragon Princess Meihui gave Yuan the token, allowing him to skip the assessment entirely. The first reason was simple. She could tell by Yuan's dragon scent that he was more than qualified to participate, making the assessment process unnecessary and a waste of time. The second reason was because of the meat skewers. If the others in line were forced to endure the enticing aroma for too long, it would likely lead to another commotion. By allowing Yuan to leave early, they would avoid any further disruptions caused by the irresistible scent of the skewers. With the token in his grasp, Yuan and Yingzi left the scene, disappearing into the distance. I guess I don't need to worry about being affiliated with the Divine Dragon Sanctuary for now. Yuan tossed the token into his spatial ring. What are you going to do for the next 2 years? Yingzi asked him. Yuan pondered for several minutes before responding. If the Divine Dragon Sanctuary is as powerful as the Eternal Phoenix Domain, they should have training areas like the 9 levels of hell, right? I should take this time to strengthen myself further and prepare for the festival. But will they allow someone who isn't affiliated with their territory to use these training spots? Yingzi mused. Let's go ask that blue-haired dragon. Yingzi and Yuan made their way back to the blue-haired dragon, who'd barely moved from his spot since they left. You're back already? Did something happen? The blue-haired man asked them with a puzzled face since it'd been less than 2 hours since they left. Yuan shook his head and explained, No, I have the participation token in my possession. I returned because I have some more questions. Already? That place is usually crowded, and it normally takes several weeks to acquire a token unless you skip the queue, the man remarked, his expression filled with surprise. One thing led to another, and I somehow managed to skip the line. Yuan smiled. So something did happen. By the way, why are you still here? Oh, I am something like a guide. It's my job to assist visitors like you. There are many first-time visitors because of the Dragon God Festival, after all. I see. Anyway, you have some questions, right? I'll try my best to answer them. I'm looking for something to do while I wait for the Dragon God Festival. Are there any training areas available in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary? Yuan asked. Training grounds, huh? There are several, but they are only accessible by those affiliated with the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. How does one become affiliated? You must visit the Divine Dragon Council and pass several assessments. Once you become an affiliate, you will essentially become part of the Divine Dragon Sanctuary's prowess. For example, if our territory is ever threatened, you are obligated to aid us. Can I ask about the assessments? What do they ask for? The Divine Dragon Council will ask about your background to determine whether you are qualified to become an affiliate. So there's a chance I won't qualify, huh? Yes, but I have no reason to believe why you wouldn't qualify. In fact, you're pretty much guaranteed to qualify because you belong to the dragon race. I see. Where is the Divine Dragon Council? In response to Yuan's question, the blue-haired man retrieved a white stone and said, "This will bring you directly to the Divine Dragon Council." This. Yuan accepted the white stone and inspected it with interest. "You've never seen a teleport stone before?" the man inquired, sounding somewhat surprised. No. They don't exist where I am from." "I guess that's not too surprising since they're unique within the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. These teleport stones are created by the Void Dragon, who has the ability to teleport. If you shatter that stone, you will create a rift that will directly bring you to the Divine Dragon Council." Sometime later, Yuan shattered the teleport stone, releasing the energy stored within. The energy surged out, swirling in the air before forming a rift in front of him. "The rift will disappear after 10 seconds. The man quickly warned him. "Thanks for your help again," Yuan said to him before jumping into the rift, followed by Yingzi. Upon emerging from the rift, Yuan found himself standing before a majestic pagoda, its intricate design far surpassing the one he had seen at Phoenix Ascendancy Plateau. The towering structure was adorned with elaborate carvings and shimmering details, exuding an air of ancient power and significance. Its grandeur made it clear that this was a place of great importance. Just like the dragon ascending mountain, there was a huge line waiting to go inside the pagoda. Fortunately, the line isn't as long. Moreover, it's moving much faster, Yuan thought to himself as he entered the back of the line. As they waited in line, Yuan listened to the conversations around them. "Hopefully I qualify as a Divine Dragon Warrior. That would make life much easier in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Unless you are a dragon or have a master-level bloodline, it's near impossible to become a Divine Dragon Warrior. I'll be satisfied with just being affiliated with the Divine Dragon Sanctuary since having a higher rank also means having more responsibility. So what if I have more responsibility? Only Divine Dragon Warriors are allowed to use their training grounds, and that is my sole reason for coming here." After overhearing the nearby conversation, Yuan began to wonder if being affiliated with the Divine Dragon Sanctuary was similar to joining a faction in the Nine Heavens since there appeared to be ranks amongst those affiliated. "I need to become at least a Divine Dragon Warrior to use their training grounds, huh?" Yuan mused inwardly. Sometime later, he looked at Yingzi and asked, "Are you also going to become an affiliate?" Chapter 1654 Divine Dragon Council, 2. Chapter 1654 Divine Dragon Council, 2. "I don't really have a reason to join the Divine Dragon Sanctuary." Yingzi shook her head. Most people join the Divine Dragon Sanctuary for one of two reasons. Some sought access to the powerful training grounds available within the territory, hoping to grow stronger. Others joined to use the Divine Dragon Sanctuary's prestigious name as a shield, gaining protection and influence under its banner. I do not care about their training grounds, and I don't need their protection, so I don't really benefit from joining them. However, if you were to remain in the Primal Expanse forever, I wouldn't mind joining them with you. Yuan smiled at her words and said, "Unfortunately, I must return to my home soon." "I know. That's why I won't join them. Also, I am what most consider free-spirited. I don't wish to be constrained by their rules. It won't matter to you who will be leaving soon, but it's a big deal for those living in the Primal Expanse." "I see." After a moment of silence, Yuan spoke again, "This just crossed my mind, but do Shadow Dwellers also have their own territory?" She nodded, "We do. It's a small and remote territory somewhere in the hollowed expanse, where sunlight doesn't exist." Yuan's eyes widened at this information, and he said, "I know of the hollowed expanse. But I never got the chance to see it for myself for the same reasons I didn't visit the Divine Dragon Sanctuary." The Primal Expanse was composed of many smaller regions, each with its own distinct environment, power structures, and unique inhabitants. These regions varied greatly, from fiery domains to shadowy realms. One such region was the Hollowed Expanse, a world shrouded in eternal darkness, where no sunlight ever touched the land. The creatures and powers that thrived there were adapted to the shadows, such as the Shadow Dwellers. Since Shadow Dwellers are born from shadows, most of them originated from the Hollowed Expanse. In this realm of eternal darkness, the lack of sunlight and the pervasive gloom created the perfect conditions for these beings to come into existence. What kind of place is the hallowed expanse? Yuan asked a moment later. Yingzi recalled her memories of the hallowed expanse and said, "It's a gloomy place, with hardly any living trees and plants. The land is mostly sand and dirt, and not many primals venture there. If we want food, we have to leave the region." Based on Yingzi's description, Yuan imagined the hallowed expanse as a vast desert, barren and desolate, where it was always nighttime. "That's why I left the hallowed expanse in the first place, even if it means weakening myself," Yingzi continued. Since shadow and darkness were the sources of shadow dwellers' power, they preferred to stay in the darkest places, where their abilities were at their peak. For Yingzi, leaving the hallowed expanse, the darkest place in the primal expanse, significantly weakened her. The line moved quickly as they chatted, and before Yuan realized it, they had reached the front, now standing directly in front of the towering pagoda. Whenever someone exited the pagoda, it was immediately clear whether they had succeeded or not. Those who had a badge pinned to their chest wore expressions of pride or relief, while those without a badge left empty-handed, often looking disappointed or frustrated. Eventually, it was Yuan's turn. Noticing the woman standing by the entrance beckoning toward him, Yuan stepped forward and approached the pagoda. "You can wait for me out here," Yuan said to Yingzi as he left. Sometime later, Yuan entered the first floor of the pagoda. The interior was modestly decorated, with minimal furnishings. At the far end of the room, a young man sat behind a desk, his posture relaxed. When the young man noticed Yuan's scent, he raised an eyebrow and asked in a surprised tone, "What dragon bloodline do you have?" "My dragon bloodline." Yuan swallowed nervously. Fortunately, had prepared for this question. "I'm an Azure dragon." When Yuan considered his identity as a dragon, his first thought was to claim he hailed from the Shi family's heritage. However, he quickly realized that he had never actually learned the name of their bloodline. In the end, he used the Azure dragon's name. "An Azure dragon? That can't be right," the young man replied, his brow furrowing in doubt. "I can tell by your scent alone that you come from a much more prestigious bloodline. Are you trying to hide your identity?" "Why? If you want to become affiliated with our divine dragon sanctuary, you must tell us the truth. We don't accept those with ulterior motives." "I didn't think he would see through me so easily." Yuan sighed inwardly. He responded a moment later, "Actually, I don't know my race. I was abandoned when I was young, and the ones who accepted and raised me were Azure dragons." The young man narrowed his gaze at Yuan. "Where are you from?" "I'm from a remote and insignificant territory located on the other side of the primal expanse," Yuan revealed, his tone calm and sincere. "What is your reason for wanting to join our divine dragon sanctuary?" "My parents have always spoken highly of the divine dragon sanctuary even though they've never been here," Yuan swiftly responded. "They also recommended that I come here once they are no longer in this world." What a load of bullshit, the young man sneered inwardly at Yuan's excuses. However, even though he knew that Yuan wasn't being truthful, he couldn't ignore Yuan's powerful bloodline. "I don't know what he's planning, but we can figure out his true identity through the assessment." Sometime later, the young man smiled at Yuan and said, "All right, you pass. Moreover, I believe you have the potential to become someone greater than a divine dragon warrior, so I'm going to give you a chance. Head to the second floor and take the assessment there. If you pass, you'll become a divine dragon commander instead of a mere divine dragon warrior. Be proud. You're only the fourth to be sent to the second floor in the last 1,000 years. Join privilege for VIP chaps." Chapter 1655 Divine Dragon Council, 3. Chapter 1655 Divine Dragon Council, 3, huh? That's it? Yuan thought, surprised by how easy the process had been. He had expected the assessment to be much more difficult and strict, but in reality, it had turned out to be far simpler than he had anticipated. "Then he'll head to the second floor now." Yuan gave the young man a slight bow before approaching the spiraling staircase by the wall. Several moments later, Yuan stepped onto the second floor. The layout and decorations were almost identical to those on the first floor. At the other end of the room, a middle-aged man was slumped over a desk, seemingly asleep. His posture was relaxed, and his soft, rhythmic breathing filled the otherwise quiet room. Yuan didn't say anything and approached the desk. Suddenly, without opening his eyes, the middle-aged man spoke. It's been 200 years since someone was sent up here. A moment later, the man slowly opened his eyes and sat up, his calm gaze immediately locking onto Yuan. I see why you were sent up here. You have a strong bloodline. Thank you. The middle-aged man then spoke. In order to qualify as a divine dragon commander, you must demonstrate a certain level of prowess, and your bloodline must be at least commander quality. In the primal expanse, bloodlines are ranked in the following order: Primal, Master, Commander, Emperor, and Monarch. Each rank signifies a major increase in potential and influence. Monarch quality bloodlines sit at the very pinnacle, and only supreme beings like the Dragon God, Primordial Phoenix, and Primal Monarch possess such powerful bloodlines. The middle-aged man retrieved a finger-sized needle and tossed it to Yuan. Feed it your blood, he instructed. Yuan didn't act right away. Instead, he stared at the needle in silence for a moment, as there was a good chance this would expose his identity. The next moment, Yuan pricked his finger with the needle, and it immediately absorbed his blood. 954, what are you thinking so deeply about? The middle-aged man suddenly inquired when he noticed Yuan's hesitancy. Nothing important. It's just that I've never seen anything like this before and was wondering what it does. Yuan said with an innocent smile. Where did you come from to have never seen that before? It tests the quality of your bloodline. The middle-aged man briefly explained. I see. The next moment, Yuan pricked his finger with the needle, and it immediately absorbed his blood. Once the needle had consumed enough of Yuan's blood, it began to glow faintly with a green light. In a matter of moments, the color shifted rapidly from green to blue, then to red, before finally settling into a glistening silver. The middle-aged man's eyes widened with shock. Cue quickly. Let me see it. He hastily urged. Yuan nodded and gave the needle to him, who inspected it with a serious expression on his face. My eyes are not deceiving me. You actually have an emperor-quality bloodline. The middle-aged man stood up and shifted his gaze from the needle to Yuan, his eyes burning with excitement. What sort of bloodline do you have? Yuan was inwardly relieved that the needle only revealed the quality of his bloodline and nothing more. I don't know, he responded a moment later. What do you mean by that? I grew up without my parents. Is that so? The middle-aged man muttered, his tone laced with skepticism as he eyed the glowing needle. While he clearly doubted Yuan's background, he didn't outright deny it either. After all, given how chaotic the primal expanse was, Yuan's claim was entirely possible, even common. In a realm where powerful bloodlines often mingled and mysterious origins were not unheard of, the idea of someone like Yuan emerging from obscurity wasn't out of the question. Alright, you passed this assessment. Congratulations, you're the second to pass the second floor in the last 1,000 years. What about assessing my prowess? Yuan asked. You'll be doing that on the next floor. Although your cultivation is lacking, I don't doubt you have immense potential as someone with an emperor-quality bloodline, so there's a very good chance you'll qualify as a divine dragon commander even if you fail the next assessment. Alright. Then you'll head to the next floor now. Shortly after Yuan left the second floor, the middle-aged man noticed the needle was still glowing. That's strange. Why is it still active? Right as he muttered these words, the needle abruptly changed colors again. This is, he gasped, his face pale with shock. He dropped the needle and stumbled backward, falling onto his buttocks. The silver needle was now glowing a brilliant golden color. A golden glow. He whispered in disbelief, fully aware of the significance of such a sight. No, this can't be possible. The middle-aged man shook his head in disbelief before staring at the golden needle for a moment longer. Then, he pulled out something that worked like a communication jade slip and started speaking into it. Meanwhile, Yuan had just reached the third floor, only to find it completely empty except for 2 words painted on the wall that read, "Be patient." After seeing the words, Yuan patiently waited for the interviewer to show up. There's a formation in the center of the room. Yu Ning suddenly notified him. She continued after examining it. It appears to be a teleport formation. Yuan smiled as he sat on the floor and patiently waited for the interviewer to show up. Unbeknownst to Yuan, the Divine Dragon Sanctuary was in a commotion, stirred by a piece of specific information that spread like wildfire amongst the upper ranks. What? A new descendant of the dragon god showed up. How is that even possible? The dragon god should only have 3 descendants. Perhaps he conceived another one in secret. That's highly unlikely. Where's this supposed 4th descendant? According to Counselor Luo, he's currently on the 3rd floor of the Divine Dragon Hall. How long has it been since someone made it to the 3rd floor? Who's going to do the assessment? I heard the interviewer has already been decided. About 15 minutes had passed since Yuan began waiting for his interviewer to show up when the teleportation formation suddenly flickered to life, and a handsome young man with a dignified and commanding presence emerged from it. Chapter 1656 Long Yejun. Chapter 1656 Long Yejun. After appearing on the 3rd floor, the handsome young man approached Yuan with a calm smile. Hello. I hope you didn't wait too long. Yuan quickly stood up and said, No, I didn't. The young man then introduced himself. I am Long Yejun, and I will be your interviewer. Before we begin, can you tell me about yourself? I'm Yuan, and I traveled here from the other side of the primal expanse. I grew up in a small territory with 2 Azure dragons, who I consider my parents. Unfortunately, I don't know my real parents. I see. Long Yejun mumbled with a ponderous face. Sometime later, he looked at Yuan with a serious expression and said, To be honest, based on the assessment from the 2nd floor, we believe you may have a connection to the dragon god. What? Yuan's eyes widened with surprise after hearing this unexpected news. When you say dragon god, do you mean the master of the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, that dragon god? Long Yejun nodded, indeed. Yuan wore a dazed look on his face as he pondered how such a thing was possible inwardly. I may be related to the dragon god? That's ridiculous. I don't recall ever meeting him even as Tian, so how is it possible that we're related? Long Yejun stared intently at Yuan's face, carefully analyzing every detail as if searching for something hidden beneath the surface. He's genuinely surprised by the information. Maybe he really has no idea that he has the dragon god's blood within him, and it was pure coincidence that he came to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, he wondered inwardly. After a brief moment of silence, Yuan's expression shifted, as though a sudden realization had dawned on him. The blood cleansing ceremony. He gained the ability to transform after the blood cleansing ceremony at the ancient dragon city, and the Shi family claimed they were unaware of the origin of the blood he absorbed. However, the system had confirmed that the blood belonged to the dragon god. That expression, did you remember something? Long Yejun inquired with a slight smile on his face. Before Yuan could respond, he continued, Anyway, I am not here to question your bloodline. We can do that after the assessment. For this assessment, I will be evaluating your combat prowess. The most effective way to do that is through a sparring match with you. Long Yejun suddenly suppressed his cultivation to perfect chaotic master, matching Yuan's cultivation. You will pass this assessment if you can injure me even slightly, he said afterward. Are you sure? Yuan asked. Yes. And take as much time as you need to prepare. Yuan didn't say anything else and became silent. How should I go about this? He wondered inwardly. He could easily injure this confident interviewer with number 1 under heaven, but he was pretending to be a dragon, and very few beings in the primal expanse used weapons. Moreover, he wanted to test out something. Sometime later, Yuan said, All right, I am ready. Long Yejun beckoned with a provocative gesture, saying, Show me what you've got. In the next instant, Yuan sprang from the ground, hurtling toward Long Yejun with incredible speed. Relentless dragon overwhelms the 9 heavens. As Yuan activated his fist technique, he channeled his chaotic essence into it, amplifying its power several times over. Long Yejun's eyes widened as Yuan's aura suddenly erupted with overwhelming force. Instinctively, he leaped back, attempting to dodge the oncoming strike. However, Yuan suddenly activated Dragon's Gaze, catching Long Yejun completely off guard. The technique paralyzed him for a split second, leaving him vulnerable. Long Yejun couldn't even utter a word before Yuan's fist, engulfed in a black aura that resembled flames, slammed into his gut, launching him across the room. His body crashed into the wall with such force that the entire building trembled. If not for the defensive formations reinforcing the structure, his impact would have shattered through the wall entirely. Despite the brutal blow, Long Yejun somehow managed to land on his feet, his expression grim but composed as he steadied himself. He took a deep breath, then forcefully blew his nose, expelling a fair amount of blood. Long Yejun stared at his own blood on the ground, then chuckled with excitement. When was the last time I saw my own blood? Ha ha ha, he laughed, a wild glint in his eyes. Does this mean I passed the assessment? Yuan asked. Long Yejun stopped laughing to look at him with a solemn gaze. No, he responded. But that wasn't enough to injure me. Yuan didn't say anything and merely looked at the blood on the floor. Ahem. Long Yejun awkwardly cleared his throat and explained, I was training before I came here, and that blood was accumulated then. Yuan shook his head inwardly and responded with a bittersweet smile, I understand. Let's continue, then. A satisfied smile appeared on Long Yejun's face as he settled into a combative stance, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. After a brief moment of stillness, Long Yejun made the first move, using a movement technique to instantly get in front of Yuan. Yuan reacted swiftly, but as he raised his arms to defend, Long Yejun's eyes gleamed with a golden light. Dragon's Gaze? Yuan was caught off guard by Long Yejun's Dragon's Gaze and became momentarily stunned. Payback time. Long Yejun laughed as he drove his fist into Yuan's stomach, precisely where he had been struck moments earlier. Yuan was instantly sent flying, crashing into the wall with even greater force than when he had struck Long Yejun. The impact reverberated through the room, shaking the entire building. Yet, it was Long Yejun who bore the brunt of the damage from the exchange. His hand was bruised and slightly bleeding, while Yuan emerged seemingly unscathed. Fuck. What is your body made of? Long Yejun cried out, shaking his hand in an attempt to dispel the pain, disbelief written across his face. Chapter 1657 Endless Arena. Chapter 1657 Endless Arena. Although Yuan appeared unscathed on the outside, he hadn't emerged from the exchange completely uninjured. Beneath his calm exterior, the impact had taken a slight toll on his body, but his regenerative ability swiftly healed the damage, allowing him to recover almost instantly. I cannot underestimate this man. Not only did he penetrate my defenses with his bare fists, but he's even restricted his cultivation to my level. Yuan stared at Long Yejun with a sharp gaze. Unbeknownst to him, an excited smile crept onto his face, giving him a fierce and almost vicious appearance. When Long Yejun saw Yuan's expression, he also grinned excitedly, I see. So you're just like me. This is going to be fun. Ha ha ha. However, this place is too small and restrictive for us to really go all out. Long Yejun tossed a teleport stone to Yuan and said, let's change our location to somewhere more suitable. Before Yuan could even respond, Long Yejun crushed his own teleport stone and disappeared from the room. Yuan didn't think too much about it and also crushed the teleport stone the next moment. After being teleported, Yuan found himself in a vast land that seemed to have been artificially flattened. The ground was smooth and level, resembling the surface of a grand arena prepared for battle, and it stretched endlessly toward the horizon, its sheer size almost overwhelming. Welcome to the endless arena, Long Yejun said, gesturing to the vast expanse around them. This is the largest arena in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, spanning over 100,000 miles. We won't have to worry about slamming into walls and whatnot here. Whenever you're ready. Long Yejun gestured to Yuan a moment later. After a moment of stillness, Yuan made the first move. However, this time, Long Yejun had no intention of letting Yuan land a hit so easily and swiftly countered with a move of his own. When they clashed, a powerful ripple surged through the arena, as if two colossal mountains had collided, sending shockwaves across the vast expanse and shaking the ground beneath them. Each of their punches was so powerful that it generated a fierce gust of wind, while every kick unleashed small windstorms, the sheer force of their battle reshaping the air around them. In addition to their fists and legs, they also unleashed Dragon's Gaze on each other whenever possible. However, now that they were both fully aware of each other's capabilities, neither of them was caught off guard, skillfully countering the other's Dragon's Gaze with their own. How is he canceling out my dragon's authority? Long Yejun thought in disbelief. Even though I've suppressed my cultivation, my soul strength should still be vastly superior. Meanwhile, Yuan was focusing all his efforts on breaking through Long Yejun's mental defenses, but no matter how hard he tried, he found himself unable to penetrate them. We're pretty evenly matched at this moment, but neither of us is truly going all out. Since it was rare for Yuan to encounter an opponent equal in strength, he took this moment to savor the fight. In fact, he had already forgotten about the assessment entirely, lost in the thrill of the battle. Long Yejun felt the same way. Even if he suppressed his cultivation to match his opponent, only a handful of people in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary could even land a hit on him, let alone rival him in strength. What was your name again? Long Yejun suddenly asked. Yuan. Allow me to introduce myself again. I am Long Yejun, a descendant of the Dragon God. Since you also have the Dragon God's blood in you, that makes you my younger brother. How many children does the Dragon God have? Yuan asked as they continued fighting. We always thought there were only 3 of us, but with your sudden appearance, there are now 4 of us. I am the second eldest. The second eldest, huh? No wonder why you're so strong. Yuan laughed out loud. If I am strong, what are you, the youngest? Your cultivation may be low, but your prowess does not match your cultivation in the slightest, being several realms stronger. Just to fight with you on an equal footing, I had to increase my cultivation to intermediate chaotic commander. Long Yejun admitted that had increased his cultivation just to match Yuan's prowess. As Yuan and Long Yejun continued their intense battle, nearby beings began to take notice. Given the vast size of the endless arena, it was common for multiple individuals to use it simultaneously, typically without paying attention to others. However, the sheer ferocity of Yuan and Long Yejun's fight was impossible to ignore, compelling onlookers to steal glances and witness the spectacle unfolding before them. Huh? Isn't that Prince Yejun? Who is his opponent? I don't recognize him. I don't recognize him, but he's fighting with Prince Yejun on equal footing while having a lower cultivation. What in Dragon God's name is going on? One of the onlookers exclaimed in disbelief, unable to comprehend how someone could rival Long Yejun, a descendant of the Dragon God. Wait a second. I heard rumors about a 4th descendant showing up very recently. Is that him? The Dragon God's 4th descendant looks extremely promising. He might even rival the eldest, that tyrant. Impossible. Nobody can rival that tyrant, who is the closest to reaching the Dragon God's prowess. Anyway, Prince Yejun is obviously holding back. If he became serious, the 4th won't be able to fight back. I wouldn't be so sure about that. It seems to me the 4th is also holding back. Time will tell. More and more people began showing up at the endless arena to watch Yuan and Long Yejun's fight once word of it spread. As the fight progressed, both Yuan and Long Yejun grew more serious, gradually revealing more of their true strength. That should be enough for a warm-up. Let's get serious now. Long Yejun suddenly stopped fighting and said. Fine by me. Yuan nodded, agreeing with him. Chapter 1658 Dragon God's Descendant. Chapter 1658 Dragon God's Descendant. Yuan and Long Yejun silently stared at each other, seeming waiting for the other to act first. If you're not going to move first, then allow me to. Long Yejun suddenly began transforming. His aura erupted like a volcano, and scales began appearing all over his body. Furthermore, a golden mask that was shaped like a dragon's face materialized on Long Yejun's face, giving him a fearsome presence. Seeing this, Yuan used God of War's astral arts, but he restricted the avatar's size to be only slightly larger than his own body. What is that? Long Yejun murmured, staring at the avatar with awe and intrigue, as had never seen a technique like that before. It was not just Long Yejun. The onlookers were also baffled by God of War's astral arts, a unique technique unlike anything they've seen before. Why are you just standing there? Let's go. Yuan made the first move a moment later when Long Yejun only stood there in silence. Long Yejun quickly snapped out of his daze to block Yuan's strike before countering with his own. Long Yejun's speed and power had significantly increased since his transformation. As for Yuan, not only did he become stronger, but he also grew another pair of arms, allowing him to attack more frequently. After their power-up, each of their punches and kicks would create powerful windstorms and cause violent earthquakes. What is going on here? A new onlooker showed up after being attracted by the commotion. Princess Meihui. The others bowed to her after recognizing her. The Dragon Prince is currently sparring with the fourth dragon god Descendant. Someone filled her in on the situation. Huh? My brother? And what do you mean fourth dragon god Descendant? Dragon Princess Meihui raised her eyebrows in a puzzled manner. This was her first time hearing this news. You haven't heard? This person managed to reach the second floor of the Divine Dragon Council, and when his bloodline was tested, it was revealed he had the dragon god's blood within him. It's been spreading around like crazy. This is my first time hearing about it. Princess Meihui shook her head. She narrowed her focus at the figure fighting with her brother, Long Yejun. When she saw Yuan's face and recognized him, her eyes widened with shock. He's the fourth dragon god Descendant? No way, she exclaimed. What? You know him? We've met and even spoken very recently. However, I can't say that I know him. To think he'd have dragon god's blood in him, what kind of coincidence is this? Princess Meihui sighed out loud. It's just a rumor for now since they haven't confirmed if he is truly the dragon god's fourth descendant. Princess Meihui shook her head and said, It's likely true since I felt a strange connection with him when we first met. Although it was subtle, it was still there. I didn't think much of it back then and even ignored it. No way, so he might really be the fourth dragon god's descendant? The others were speechless. In the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, those who were affiliated followed a strict ranking structure. This hierarchy determined not only status but also privileges and responsibilities, with higher-ranked individuals holding greater authority and access to powerful resources, while the lower ranks strove to prove themselves worthy of advancement. The majority of affiliates within the Divine Dragon Sanctuary do not possess a rank, making even the lowest rank a position of immense authority. The lowest rank within the Divine Dragon Sanctuary was the Divine Dragon Warrior, entrusted with maintaining order within the territory. They also served as the first line of defense and enforcers of the territory's peace. Above them were the Divine Dragon Commanders, responsible for leading and directing the Divine Dragon Warriors. They were akin to generals in the military. Only 100 Divine Dragon Commanders existed in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, while hundreds of thousands of Divine Dragon Warriors exist. The next and highest attainable rank was the Divine Dragon Council. Comprised of fewer than a dozen individuals, the members of the council wielded the greatest authority within the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, second only to the Dragon God and his descendants. They were entrusted with making crucial decisions and overseeing the sanctuary's most important matters. Although the Divine Dragon Council was the highest rank, there was a rank even higher than them, reserved only for the Dragon God's offspring, the Dragon God's descendants. Has the Dragon God commented on the situation? Princess Meihui asked the ones around her. No, but the Dragon God should have been notified already. Meihui looked toward the sky and mumbled, Father. Yuan and Long Yejun continued their battle for 2 days straight without a moment of rest. Both had long forgotten about the assessment, fully absorbed in the thrill of the fight, pushing each other to their limits as they exchanged relentless blows. Neither seemed willing to back down, their stamina and determination seemingly boundless. You're really something, Yuan. I haven't been entertained to this extent in a very long time. However, I can tell that you're still holding back. Show me everything you've got. Are you sure? Don't complain if you get hurt. Ha ha ha. Of course. I won't complain even if you kill me by accident. Long Yejun laughed out loud. Then allow me to show you my true strength. Yuan's aura suddenly surged, transforming into something more refined and razor-sharp, resembling the cutting edge of a sword. Long Yejun halted his movement and even subconsciously backed away from Yuan after sensing his enhanced sword aura. What is that power? Long Yejun muttered in astonishment. Everyone watching was equally bewildered by Yuan's sword aura. The sharp, otherworldly energy left them in awe, unable to comprehend its origin or nature. I am not done yet. After releasing his enhanced sword aura, Yuan imbued it with his chaotic essence. Boom! The sword aura instantly intensified several times, almost reaching the realm of supreme sword aura in terms of prowess. Chapter 1659 Chaotic Sword Aura. Chapter 1659 Chaotic Sword Aura. Oh, this is not bad, much better than I anticipated. Yuan nodded in satisfaction, impressed by the result of fusing his chaotic essence with his enhanced sword aura. What is that power? Long Yejun asked again. Yuan pondered for a moment before responding, Chaotic Sword Aura. He decided to give his sword aura a new name. Chaotic Sword Aura, what a fearsome technique. Long Yejun swallowed nervously. Despite the distance between them, it felt as though his body was being assaulted by countless invisible blades. Had his physique been any weaker, Yuan's aura alone would have been enough to kill him on the spot. In fact, a sizable 500-meter-long crater had formed around Yuan. His chaotic sword aura was so sharp and overwhelming that his mere presence had obliterated everything around him. Here I come, Yuan warned Long Yejun before he swung his arm in a chopping motion. Shah! A black-colored sword light was created from the motion and flew at Long Yejun. Long Yejun was barely able to react and narrowly dodged it, or so he thought. After sensing what felt like a drop of water flowing down his face, Long Yejun awkwardly reached for his face. This is... When he looked at his fingers, they were stained by his own blood. Long Yejun trembled at the sight of his own blood. It had been so long since someone had managed to penetrate his scales that he couldn't remember the last time it happened. Ah, this sensation, this thrill that I am feeling. A crazed expression appeared on Long Yejun's face as he licked his blood-stained fingers. Ha 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 ha. Long Yejun's aura suddenly skyrocketed, piercing straight through the heavens. Let me enjoy this some more, you, brother Yuan. Long Yejun charged at Yuan. Yuan also wore a wide smile on his face as he faced Long Yejun head-on. Boom! When they clashed, Yuan's chaotic sword aura scattered in every direction, carving deep sword cuts into the surrounding area. Long Yejun, who stood directly in front of Yuan, bore the brunt of the scattered sword aura with his bare body. Sword cuts appeared all over Long Yejun's body, quickly drenching him in blood. However, despite the severity of the sight, the wounds were superficial, no more than paper cuts. Within moments, his naturally strong body healed all the sword cuts. My turn. Long Yejun opened his mouth, and a bright orb of light suddenly began to form inside, glowing with intense energy as it rapidly grew in size and brilliance. Yuan's instincts warned him of the impending danger, but he found himself unable to move when he tried to dodge as Long Yejun held tightly onto his wrists. Long Yejun had deliberately closed the distance between them, enduring Yuan's previous attack directly with his body, all in order to capture him and prevent his escape. Dragon's Breath. Once he gathered enough energy, Long Yejun unleashed it from his mouth, shooting a beam of light resembling heaven-splitting sword strike, even rivaling its destructiveness. Yuan's entire body was swallowed by the massive beam of light, his silhouette disappearing completely within its blinding brilliance. Long Yejun kept his mouth open, continuously releasing the dragon's breath until every last ounce of energy had been expended. It took several long seconds before Long Yejun finally closed his mouth. When the dragon's breath attack was complete, it left a path of utter devastation in its wake, and Yuan was nowhere to be seen. Shit. Did I accidentally kill him? Long Yejun muttered in a dazed manner after snapping out of his frenzied state. A tsunami of worry and guilt washed over Long Yejun as he realized what had just done. He frantically scanned the devastated area, his heart pounding anxiously, dreading the worst outcome. Wow, that was scary. I almost died there. A familiar voice suddenly resounded, prompting Long Yejun to turn around. Yuan was standing right behind him, seemingly unscathed. However, he was naked since all of his clothes and equipment were destroyed by the attack. Thank the dragon god you're alive. Long Yejun exclaimed, feeling a surge of relief wash over him when he saw Yuan had survived his brutal attack. He let out a shaky breath, realizing just how close had come to a tragic mistake. He wouldn't have known what to do if he had accidentally killed Yuan. Do you still want to continue? Yuan asked, seemingly eager to continue fighting despite his near-death experience. Long Yejun shook his head with a bittersweet smile and said, "No, let's stop here." He continued, "It's embarrassing considering my status and experience, but I tend to lose control when I get too excited in a fight. Anyway, I'm glad you're safe. This is my loss." Yuan smiled and dismissively waved his hand, "Don't worry about it. I know how you feel since it also happens to me. But how did you survive? I am certain my dragon's breath landed on you since I could still feel the sensation of your wrist after I released it." Long Yejun suddenly asked. "It did hit me, and it even destroyed most of my body." "What? But you look perfectly fine." "I'm quite confident in my regenerative abilities." Yuan smiled. Although Long Yejun was too preoccupied to see it, the onlookers had witnessed Yuan reconstructing his entire body from a single cell, which left them all astonished, even terrified. Sometime later, Yuan retrieved the golden dragon robe and wore it. "Thank the heavens I didn't wear this during the battle, or it would have been destroyed." Yuan sighed inwardly. Unfortunately, the rest of Yuan's equipment had been utterly obliterated by Long Yejun's dragon's breath. Among the losses were the treasured armor and boots that had once belonged to the evil god, which he had only recently acquired. These two treasures had endured thousands of years of abuse and even survived one of the biggest wars in the divine heaven. Yet, they were somehow destroyed so soon after returning to Yuan's possession. Stygian vest and Stygian boots. What a pity. Yuan muttered in a gloomy tone. Realizing that had destroyed Yuan's treasures, Long Yejun said, "Sorry, I also destroyed your valuables." "It's fine. At least they were destroyed in a battle. They were also quite old and worn out, anyway." "No, it's not fine. I will compensate you fully. I promise." Long Yejun said with a heartfelt face. Yuan nodded, acknowledging his sincerity. Chapter 1660 Ancient Azure Dragon. Chapter 1660 Ancient Azure Dragon. Sometime after their fight ended, Long Yejun said to Yuan, "Although you have passed the assessment, it never mattered since you're one of the dragon god's descendants, so you will automatically be ranked above the Divine Dragon Council." Oh. Yuan wondered if he should follow the flow and pretend to be a dragon god's descendant. If the dragon god is as powerful as the primordial phoenix, there's a good chance he will be able to see through me, so the longer I continue to impersonate his offspring, the worse things will get for me. However, if I reveal myself now, who knows how Long Yejun and the others will react. After some serious pondering, Yuan decided to continue acting as one of the dragon god's descendants to take advantage of their training grounds for as long as possible. Even if his identity were exposed later by the dragon god, Yuan was confident that the Primal Monarch wouldn't allow any real harm to come to him. "Hey, we meet again." A familiar voice suddenly resounded, prompting Yuan to turn his head. "Princess Meihui." Yuan acknowledged her with a nod. "There's no need for such formality between us siblings. Allow me to introduce myself again. I am Long Meihui, the youngest of the dragon god's descendant." Long Meihui said with a beautiful smile on her face. Yuan. I'll call you Brother Yuan from now on, so you should call me Sister Meihui." "Elder sister is fine, too." Long Meihui chuckled blissfully. Although she was the youngest, she was still billions of years old, So one could imagine her happiness in finally becoming an elder sister. I am finally an elder sister. I am no longer the youngest. Ahaha. I thought this day would never come. Long Meihui laughed out loud. She was so happy that she began crying a moment later. By the way, Yuan suddenly spoke, can I still participate in the Dragon God Festival as the Dragon God's descendant? Of course. Well, also be participating. Long Yejun nodded. I see. That's great. Are you participating because there's something you want to accomplish? Can you tell us? Maybe we can help you right now. Long Meihui suddenly said. As one of the Dragon God's descendant, there was very little they couldn't achieve in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Yuan nodded and said, a close friend of mine is cursed, and I need the power of the Sacred Chalice of Purification to cure him. The Sacred Chalice of Purification, huh? If you can bring your friend to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, we can help him. Long Yejun said. Yuan shook his head and sighed, unfortunately, my friend cannot leave his territory, so I have to bring the treasure to him. That would be difficult to do since the Sacred Chalice of Purification hasn't left the Divine Dragon Sanctuary since it was brought here. Long Meihui said. But if you win the Dragon God Festival, you can make that request to the Dragon God. Long Yejun continued. That's what I plan on doing, Yuan said. Good luck, brother Yuan. Although we've participated in nearly every Dragon God Festival since its creation many billion years ago, we've only won a few times. Long Meihui said. What kind of trials are in the festival? Yuan asked. All kinds, from trials that test your talent to nonsensical ones like racing each other across the primal expanse. Long Yejun said. Racing across the primal expanse. How long did that take to finish? Yuan asked nervously. A few hundred years. Oh. Yuan immediately became worried after hearing that the festival may potentially last for hundreds of years. What's the shortest time a festival has ever lasted? He asked a moment later. The shortest festival happened 750 million years ago. I believe that one ended in just a few minutes. Long Yejun said after pondering for a few moments. I remember that one. It was a ridiculous trial that required us to catch a primal prepared by the Dragon God. The eldest caught it in less than 3 minutes. Long Meihui sighed as she recalled the events of that day. Anyway, brother Yuan, are you free now? I want to compensate you for the valuables that I destroyed. Long Yejun suddenly said. I am free now. Yuan nodded. Great. Take this. Long Yejun tossed another teleport stone to him. I'll see you later. Long Meihui said to him before flying away. Sometime later, Yuan crushed the teleport stone and entered the rift, followed by Long Yejun. When they emerged from the rift, Yuan found himself standing before a beautiful pavilion with a pond built around it. Where are we? He asked. Long Yejun smiled and said, the Silver Pavilion. When Long Yejun approached the pavilion, another portal appeared. This is just the entrance to my real home. Once they entered the portal, Yuan found himself surrounded by an endless, shimmering sea that was completely motionless, like water in a still cup. He stood on a long silver bridge that stretched out toward a distant island, where a large house was situated. What do you think of my world? Long Yejun asked for his impressions. Yuan looked around for a moment before responding, I can see that you like water. Long Yejun laughed at his response. He then said, I'm actually a water dragon, an ancient Azure dragon. A water dragon? I thought you were a land dragon with how well you fought on land. Yuan was surprised to learn this. Long Yejun smiled and said, if we had fought near the ocean, even near a small pond, I wouldn't have lost to you. Water dragons could only unleash their true potential when fighting near or within water, so Long Yejun had been severely handicapped during his battle with Yuan. I wouldn't be so sure about that, Yuan said provocatively. Do you want to find out? Long Yejun's aura suddenly surged, causing the still water around them to tremble with excitement. However, Before Yuan could even respond, Long Yejun retracted his aura and chuckled, "I'm just joking with you. Follow me. I'll bring you to my living quarters." Yuan silently nodded, maintaining a composed expression, though inwardly, he was startled by Long Yejun's aura just now, which was incomparably stronger than when they had fought. "If we really fought here, I have only about a 20% chance of winning," he sighed inwardly. Chapter 1661 Long Yejun's Treasures. Chapter 1661 Long Yejun's Treasures. After walking for several minutes, they finally arrived at the island. "Welcome to my humble home," Long Yejun said to Yuan as he opened the door. "Though, this is just my secondary home that I only use when I am in my human form. My real home is the water outside." The interior of the house was incredibly simple. There was only one large room with a couch, a square table, 4 chairs, and some wall decorations. "What do you typically do here?" Yuan asked out of curiosity. "This." Long Yejun suddenly sprawled out on the couch, his entire body stretched across it with one foot casually hanging off the edge. "What am I looking at?" Yuan didn't want to make any assumptions and asked. "You can't tell?" "I am relaxing." Yuan was speechless. Although the human form is very restricting and weak, it has its advantages. The biggest one is their ease of movement and small size. "I wouldn't be able to do this if I were in my true form," Long Yejun said. "I see." Speaking of human form, Long Yejun sat up and stared at Yuan with a serious face. "Your appearance is top-notch. Did you acquire it from the human face artisan?" "Human face artisan?" Yuan wore a puzzled look on his face. "You don't know the human face artisan? He's one of the top appearance makers in this world. Although his products are extremely expensive, they're all top quality. In fact, most of the top quality appearances are created by him, mine included." "Is that so?" "Anyway, to answer your question, I didn't acquire my face from him. I made it myself." "What? You made such a high-quality appearance by yourself? You should start a business with that talent. The human face artisan will finally have some real competition." "I'll think about it," Yuan said with a stiff smile. Sometime later, Long Yejun got off the couch and walked toward the steel door on the other end of the room. When he opened the door, a descending staircase was revealed. "Come with me." Yuan nodded and followed Long Yejun down the staircase. The staircase led to a tunnel made of transparent materials, allowing them to see the surrounding water. It reminded Yuan of an aquarium, with the serene, vast expanse of water pressing in from all sides as they walked through the passage. However, there was no aquatic life, so there was nothing to see. After walking for several minutes, they arrived at another room where numerous objects, each radiating a vast amount of chaotic essence, were displayed like a prized collection. "Welcome to my treasure room, where I store most of my valuables. Unfortunately, I don't have any valuables that could replace your destroyed clothes and shoes. Since humans don't exist in the primal expanse and predators only take human form as a hobby, armor-type treasures meant for human anatomy are extremely rare. Since I destroyed 2 of your valuables, you can pick any 2 treasures from here." Long Yejun continued. "Huh? Any? Are you sure?" Yuan was pleasantly surprised by his generosity. "Yes, I am sure." "Then I'll look around." There were about a dozen treasures in the room, and Yuan approached the one that was closest to him. However, when he inspected the item, he was shocked by the notifications. Grade? Quality? Description? The system failed to analyze the treasure? This was the first time the system couldn't identify a treasure at all. Is it because the treasures were created in the primal expanse? He wondered. A few moments later, Yuan looked at Long Yejun and said, "Do you mind giving me a brief description of these treasures so I know what they do?" "Oh, of course." Long Yejun walked beside him and continued, "This treasure is called Dragon's Avarice. If you feed it enough chaotic essence, it will unleash a devastating attack that rivals even a dragon's breath." "Is that the technique you used on me?" Yuan asked. "Yes." Let's move on to the next one. I'll make a decision after I hear about every treasure. Sure. The next treasure was a large golden scale that was the size of a watermelon. This is a scale directly from the dragon god. It doesn't really have any particular uses, but it's extremely durable, near indestructible. I wouldn't be able to put a scratch on it even if I used my full power. Long Yejun said. The dragon god scale? How did you acquire this? And why is it so small? It was given to me by the dragon god, our father. Our siblings also have one, so he'll probably give you one later. It's small because I made father shrink it since its actual size is a pain in the ass to carry around. Its real size could cover the entire endless arena. I see. The next treasure was an elegant earring, crafted from gleaming silver and adorned with a brilliant sapphire gem. Oh, I crafted this one myself. It greatly increases the wearer's ability to control water. I chose this shape after meeting a human a few 100 million years ago, and he was wearing something like this on his ears. Long Yejun explained. What happened to that human? Yuan asked out of curiosity. He took his own life when he realized that he couldn't return home and couldn't cultivate in this world. He was also my first and last human friend. A sorrowful expression appeared on Long Yejun's face as he recalled this tragic event. Sorry if I made you uncomfortable. It's fine. It happened a long time ago. The next treasure appeared to be nothing more than an ordinary sheet of black leather at first glance, but Yuan could sense an ominous aura emanating from it. This is dragon skin that belongs to the Dragon of Destruction, who was said to be the dragon god's strongest rival billions of years ago. After his defeat, he was skinned alive and eaten by the dragon god. This is all that remains of the Dragon of Destruction today. Yuan stared at the black leather with great interest. I can make new armor out of this, he thought. Chapter 1662 Two Treasures of His Choice. Chapter 1662 Two Treasures of His Choice. Long Yejun noticed Yuan's intrigued expression and smiled. You seem interested. Do you want it? He nodded, a little, but I will decide after looking at the other treasures. Then let's move on to the next one. The next treasure displayed was a beautiful golden marble resembling a dragon's eyes. This is the dragon's true eye. If you consume it, you'll significantly strengthen all of your senses and even learn dragon's authority. Since you already know dragon's authority, this treasure won't benefit you too much, but for an ordinary dragon, it essentially turns them into royalty. The next treasure appeared to be some kind of stone. It didn't have any distinctive shape, and its chaotic essence was also the weakest in the room. This is a small piece of the dragon god's claw. I acquired it from the first dragon god's descendant, who managed to chip it off the dragon god during a spar. If you know how to make your own treasures, this will definitely create a very powerful treasure. Yuan stared at the dragon god's claw with interest. Because he had recovered Tian Shiyuan's memories as the exalted blacksmith, these materials were more enticing than already completed treasures because he could easily customize the treasure to his own preferences. This material will be the most effective if used to create a weapon, but I already have enough weapons. Perhaps I can use it to upgrade the abyssal dagger. All sorts of ideas appeared inside Yuan's head. Sometime later, Long Yejun continued introducing the treasures to him. Since there were only a dozen treasures in the room, it didn't take long for the tour to be finished. So, have you decided on which two treasures you want? Ling Yejun asked him afterward. Yuan nodded and walked to the Dragon of Destruction's skin. I want this for my first choice. I had a feeling you would pick that. If needed, I can get someone to craft a treasure for you with that skin. Yuan shook his head and said, It's fine. I plan on doing it myself. What? This material isn't your ordinary skin but the Dragon of Destruction's skin. You'll need to be a master of crafting to deal with it. I know. I just need the proper equipment and place to craft the treasure. Yuan showed a confident smile. Unbelievable. How many talents do you have? Long Yejun muttered with a dumbfounded face. After snapping out of it, he continued, All right, they'll arrange the perfect place for you to craft the treasure. It might take a few months, though. As long as it can be done before the Dragon God Festival, Yuan said. Long Yejun retrieved the Dragon of Destruction's skin from the display and handed it over to Yuan. There's a lot more than I anticipated, Yuan mumbled after unfolding the skin to examine it properly. At a glance, there didn't appear to be much skin when it was neatly folded inside its display, but unexpectedly, after it was unfolded, its full size was revealed to be large enough to use as a ship's sail. With this much material, I can create more than just a piece of armor. Yuan smiled excitedly after realizing this. After storing the skin inside his spatial ring, Yuan approached his second choice. Long Yejun raised his eyebrows in a puzzled manner after seeing Yuan's second choice. Why did you pick this treasure? He asked. I'm not sure myself. It's a gut feeling, I guess. Yuan said with a genuine face. Are you sure? I only placed it here because of its mysterious origins. The treasure Yuan had picked for his second choice had an unknown origin and effects. Long Yejun had examined and tried to figure out its secrets since he acquired it, but to no avail. I am sure. If you say so. Long Yejun didn't say anything else and handed the treasure to Yuan, who placed it inside his spatial ring without examining it. Seeing how confidently Yuan handled the treasure, Long Yejun had a feeling that Yuan knew the origin of the treasure, but he decided not to inquire about it for now. Once Yuan had his two treasures, they left the treasure room and returned to the main room. What are you going to do until the Dragon God Festival in 2 years? Long Yejun asked. I'm going to use the training grounds to strengthen myself. Which one? I'm not sure yet since this is my first time at the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. I see. Wait a moment. Long Yejun suddenly tapped his forehead, retrieving an orb of light. After extracting the orb of light, he made a flicking motion with his fingers, shooting the orb of light directly into Yuan's forehead. Once he absorbed the light, information on the Divine Dragon Sanctuary began filling his head, from its training grounds to other miscellaneous places. He was essentially given a map of the entire Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Sometime later, Long Yejun asked, have you found a training ground yet? Yuan nodded and said, the Baneful Dragon's Poisonous Swamp. Long Yejun's eyes widened, and he hastily said, wait a second. That's one of the most dangerous training grounds available. Unless you're a poison dragon, it's essentially suicide to train there. Even I don't dare to go there. It'll be fine. My poison resistance is quite strong. Yuan said. I never asked, but what kind of dragon are you? I'll keep it a secret for now. If you can guess it, I'll do you a favor. Alright, I'll accept your challenge. Before I head to the Baneful Dragon's Poisonous Swamp, can you take me back to the Divine Dragon Hall? I came to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary with a friend. Sure thing. Long Yejun shattered a teleport stone to the Divine Dragon Hall a moment later. Sorry for making you wait so long. Yuan approached Ingzi, who was waiting beside the entrance. Where did you come from? Ingzi was puzzled since she hadn't noticed him leaving the Divine Dragon Hall even though she had been watching it without looking away the entire time. Yuan immediately explained the situation to her. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.